Welcome back to the channel. This is Trendy Storm and you are watching What If Naruto Was Banished and Joined Suna. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no time, let's start the story.
Sand. As far as the eye could see, there was only sand everywhere. It had to be surrounded by the stuff since it was named the village hidden in the sand. The blonde occasionally sank to his knees in the dunes as he trudged through them. He looked around him yearningly, seeking water, shade, anything. But only saw sand baked by the sun. He rolled down the dune after losing his footing and landing in a hollow at the base of the sand. The heat had sapped his strength, and he lay there immobile. He reached into his pocket and grabbed the leaf headband. The blonde muttered, "I really wish I'd thought this through more," and closed his eyes. After promising Sakura that he would bring Sasuke back, Naruto's thoughts returned to the place that had once been his home. As he had done 3 years prior, Naruto had returned to Konoha after training with Jiraiya and met Sasuke in the Valley of the End. He had blacked out after Sasuke's Chidori had punched a hole through his chest during their altercation. Naruto was standing over a barely conscious and unconscious Sasuke the next moment. Kyuubi claimed to have flattened Naruto after seizing control. Kyuubi had snarled as Naruto picked up Sasuke, saying, "It was either you or him and I made the choice for you." Sasuke was taken to the hospital and dragged in front of the council after Anbu grabbed him as soon as he entered Konoha's main gates. Jiraiya, Tsunade, and Iruka had attempted to protect him, but when Kyuubi took control, all of the ninja in the village felt the chakra blast. When he recalled what Danzo, the head council member, had said, he still felt sick to his stomach. Naruto Uzumaki, vessel of the Kyuubi.no. Kitsune, you are hereby banished from the village hidden in the leaves. Should you ever return to this village, you will be put to death. Is that in any way unclear? Naruto clenched his fists and shook his head. Gazing at the ground, he muttered, "It wasn't my fault. It wasn't," and began to yell, "It wasn't my fault." Uzumaki, control yourself. You will be allowed 4 hours to collect your belongings and leave. After saying that, Danzo got up and walked out of the room with the council members. Without saying anything, Naruto also walked out of the room, ignoring everyone in his path. He heard the typical insults and jeers as he went about the streets, but he had long since learned to ignore them. As he opened the door, Naruto surveyed his apartment, from the kitchen to the bed. From the table beside his bed, he took the picture of himself, Sakura, Kakashi, and Sasuke. He grabbed a bag from beneath his bed and shoved the picture inside. When there was a knock on the door, Naruto had been packing for nearly an hour, putting the bulkier items in scrolls and tossing the rest into his bag. He crossed the room and opened the door to see Lee, Tenten, Hinata and Neji standing there. "Naruto, they can't do this to you," Lee said, eyes blazing. "I agree," Neji added. "They already have." Naruto's voice had none of his normal energy as he went back to packing. "How can you stand there and accept their decision?" Tenten demanded. "Easily," Naruto said flatly. "My father has a lot of influence on the council. Maybe he can change the decision," Hinata said. "There's nothing to do. The council's choice is final. At least come and have a goodbye bowl of ramen with us," Hinata pleaded. "How can I say no to that?" Naruto laughed, uncomfortably. Team 9 and Hinata led a still gloomy Naruto to Ichiraku. Naruto's expression brightened slightly as he saw Kakashi, Iruka, Guy, Asuma, Kurenai, Shikamaru, Choji, Ino, Kiba with Akamaru at his feet, and Shino waiting for them. The 5 bowls of ramen passed in almost complete silence. Naruto didn't bolt the ramen in his normal way, as if he was savoring every bite. He eventually finished and made his way back to his apartment, accompanied by the crowd, and collected his bag. Kakashi noticed the Anbu squad on the roof above Naruto's apartment. The blonde fox boy was escorted to the main gate by the Anbu squad, Naruto's send-off party, who were glaring at them. The Anbu parted as they arrived at the gate, allowing the crowd to bid farewell for the last time. Kiba, Lee, and Guy all gave him a pat on the back. Shikamaru said, "This is troublesome," in his typical drawl. Choji gave Naruto an unopened bag of chips without saying anything. Hinata appeared to be about to cry as Naruto turned to face her. Abruptly, she put her arms around his neck and gave him a firm hug. She whispered, "Take care of Naruto," in his ear. He said, "I'll be fine," and Hinata released him. Iruka said, "Naruto, where will you go?" With a feeble smile, Naruto lied and said, "I don't know," saying, "See you around, Iruka sensei." Naruto then turned away from the leaf-covered village and ventured into the forest. In actuality, Naruto was aware of a place he could call home, or at least a safe haven. Sanagakure. The cry of a vulture brought Naruto back to baking reality. He clenched his left hand around the leaf headband. At least the council will be relieved that I'm no longer alive, Naruto pondered in his mind. Then he was covered by a shadow. He glanced up at the figure above him. In his hazy vision, Naruto could only make out the gourd and the short red hair. He asked the shadow, "Gaara?" before fainting. Gaara's rescue of Naruto from the desert occurred 4 years ago. Reluctantly, Naruto opened his eyes and moaned when he saw that it was still dark outside. His thoughts shifted to the weeks following Gaara's rescue from the desert, as was customary for him if he woke up before dawn. He had recuperated from heatstroke in a darkened room for the first few days. Naruto glanced at the table beside his bed from the ceiling. He could barely make out the old picture of him, Kakashi, Sakura, and Sasuke in the low light. The picture of him, Gaara, Kankuro, and Temari, taken on his first birthday after arriving in Suna, was next to that. Kankuro ended up slumped across the sofa after drinking a bit too much sake. Naruto took advantage of the opportunity to redesign Kankuro's kabuki paint, reverting to his pre-genin ways. Following his return, Kankuro spent the remainder of the day pursuing Naruto around Suna after taking one last look at himself in the mirror. As the sun's first rays peeked over the cliffs, Naruto slid out of his bed and sat up. Turning on the shower, he crossed the room to his bathroom. After taking off his bedtime attire, Naruto entered the water stream. As the water cascaded over him, he leaned against the tiled wall and recalled Gaara asking him if he wanted to become a Suna nin. As of 4 years ago, Naruto stood on the balcony outside his room, overlooking the hidden sand village. Gaara joined him after quietly opening the door. "What do you plan on doing?" "I have no idea," mumbled Naruto. Gaara abruptly said, "If you want, you could become a Suna shinobi," as he took a headband featuring the Suna hourglass out of his pocket. "Really? Really?" As Gaara offered Naruto the headband, Temari and Kankuro materialized on the opposite side of him. Taking the headband slowly, Naruto put it on his head. Gaara gave Naruto a rare smile while Kankuro play-punched his shoulder and Temari ruffled his hair in a sisterly manner. "You are part of Suna and our family," Gaara said. Unwillingly, Naruto shut off the water, went outside, and wrapped a towel around his waist. He dressed after tossing the towel onto his bed. In the 4 years since he had left Konoha, his clothes had changed a little. The longer, sand-colored jacket that barely reached his knees replaced the orange one. After putting the jacket over his shoulders, he walked out of his room. The castle had taken a while to get used to. Naruto had spent the first week getting lost, but after 4 years, he knew almost every inch of it. Before taking a seat at the breakfast table, Naruto walked to the kitchen and pushed the door open. As Temari and Kankuro came in, he drew a bowl of rice in his direction. Kankuro said, "Another letter from Konoha has arrived," and he let the letter fall to Naruto. As Naruto unfolded the letter and read it, he recognized the handwriting as Tsunade's. "Brat, I know you're receiving these letters. Answer at least one so we know how you're okay. As obstinate as you are, the council is refusing to give us any exceptions to their banishment order. Jiraiya remains the same perverted recluse that he always was, and Sakura, well, she would never acknowledge it, misses you terribly. But since you left, Hinata has changed. Like a lost soul, she has been wandering around Konoha. We'll find a way to get you back, so don't worry. Hokage Godime, Tsunade." It wasn't as long as some of the others, but it said the same. Naruto folded the letter up again and put it into his pocket before he turned his attention to breakfast. Why would Hinata miss me so badly? She hardly ever talked to me, Naruto thought as he ate, until Kankuro's voice broke into his mind. "Are you ever going to reply to those letters?" he asked. "No," Naruto growled around a mouthful of rice. "They're worried about you," Temari scolded him. Naruto got up so fast that his chair clattered to the ground. "Konoha can go to hell," he said. He disappeared in a whirlpool of sand, turning his back on the two. "Sometimes I wish we hadn't taught him the Suna. Shunshin," Kankuro muttered, "he leaves sand all over the place." Naruto reappeared in the street below. As he walked through the street, he remembered how strange it was when he'd first arrived in Suna to walk down a street without being called a demon or a monster. Everywhere he'd gone in Konoha, there'd always been at least one person who yelled at him. He listened, but no one said anything as they passed him. He wandered through Suna in the vague direction of his refuge, the highest point in the surrounding mountains. The area was a large hollow in the mountains, shielded from the wind-blown sand. Naruto had spent many hours in the hollow honing his skills. The results of his training had earned him a title known throughout the Wind Country. His sheer speed and the sand he left in his wake was one reason he had been given him the name Sunari, Sandstorm of the Hidden Sand Village. His reputation was almost as well known as his father's had been. Konoha's yellow flash. Naruto had found out the truth behind his father a couple of weeks before his banishment. His mind wandered back to when he'd learned about his parents as he walked. 4 years, 1 month ago, there was a layer of dust on everything in the archive room. As he placed another box of scrolls on a shelf, Naruto muttered something lewd. Sakura stirred up a cloud of dust and coughed. After inhaling deeply, Naruto strode into the room's dustiest corner and vanished into yet another dust cloud. He picked up a scroll and read the words along the side without paying attention while he was cleaning. When he realized it was addressed to him, he stopped. After giving it some thought, Naruto put it in his pocket. After completing the cleaning of the archive room, he left for home. He unrolled the scroll once he was back in his apartment, and one sheet of paper dropped to the ground. He recognized it as his birth certificate as soon as he picked it up. When he saw his father's name, Minato Namikaze Yondaime Hokage, his eyes widened. He was able to read his mother's name, despite it being nearly obscured by dust and grime. Kushina Uzumaki from the nation of Whirlpool. After shaking himself, Naruto realized he had arrived at the hollow and returned to the present. 6 shadow cones surrounded him as he made a familiar hand gesture. As the clones charged at Naruto, he braced himself. Naruto floored the nearest clone after grabbing it by the wrist. The next one sailed to the opposite side of the hollow after he planted his foot in its chest. After being punched by one of the clones, Naruto vanished in a whirlpool of sand. Naruto's feet slammed the clone to the ground. After sweeping the feet of another clone out from under him, Naruto caught it by the ankle and swung it at the final 2 clones. "Didn't even break a sweat," he said emphatically. Naruto closed his eyes and took a seat in the middle of the hollow. He concentrated on purging his thoughts and clearing his mind. As he relaxed, his body felt light. When Naruto jerked awake after falling backwards, he realized he must have fallen asleep. After lying there for a few minutes, sprawled out in the center of the hollow, he realized he was meant to be at the Suna Ninja Academy to meet the new students. Rising, he turned toward the village and disappeared in a whirl of sand. As he heard voices inside the classroom, he appeared outside and swore. This ought to leave a lasting impression, Naruto thought, smirking to himself. All the eyes in the classroom were instantly wide as Naruto appeared in his swirling sand. Before continuing, the Chunin instructor gave Naruto a fierce look. "Today is the start of your life as ninja. Over the next few years you will learn the basics of the ninjutsu, genjutsu and taijutsu, and on graduation you will be assigned to a jonin instructor." Naruto's thoughts drifted back to his days at the academy in Konoha. When the Chunin said, "Dismissed," Naruto returned. As the students bowed and filed out of the room, Naruto grinned at them. As the final Genin departed, Gaara entered the room. "How are you going to put up with them, Naruto?" asked he. Naruto grinned at Gaara and remarked, "Iruka, sensei said that they grow on you." Breathless, a sand jonin exploded onto the room. Cage. "Sama, Sunarashi. Sama, there are a group of ninja approaching the village." In the direction of Suna, a tired group of 2 Chunin, a jonin, and a wolf-sized dog trudged through the sand. In the distance, the village walls were barely discernible. When a wind carrying sand suddenly appeared and blew past them, the group shielded their eyes. Just as abruptly as it had appeared, the wind died down. Just in front of them, the group noticed a redhead and a blonde standing atop a low dune. Sakura couldn't stop staring as Kiba's mouth fell open. The changes in the blonde made it difficult for even Neji to maintain an expressionless expression. "Naruto?" inquired Sakura. "It's been a long time, Sakura-chan," Naruto remarked. Sakura blinked. He had always called her by that name, but it had lost much of its warmth. As he and Gaara began to make their way back to Suna's gate, Naruto questioned, "You just gonna stand there or are you heading into Suna?" After gathering themselves, the Konoha ninja trailed the 2 into Suna. Gaara led Neji and Kiba to the cage tower once they were inside the walls, while Sakura followed Naruto as he made his way back to his hiding place. Inquiring, "How have you been, Naruto?" Naruto grinned and said, "Good. It took a while to get used to the heat though." "Naruto, Konoha is in danger. Konoha can go to hell for all I care," Naruto yelled. "See the headband? I'm a Suna shinobi now." Sakura was shocked by what she was hearing and asked, "Naruto? Konoha turned its back on me," So I turned my back on Konoha, Naruto remarked, turning his gaze away from Sakura. Sakura cast her eyes around the hollow as they entered. She noticed the craters with a spiral pattern along one side. What about all your friends in Konoha like Hinata? She's not been the same since you left. It's like she's a genin again. No confidence, only able to pull off simple jutsus. Need I go on? After I left, why would Hinata go to pieces like that? Naruto questioned himself. Sakura, let me tell you something. When they banished me from Konoha, somewhere deep down I was happy. Happy to get away from all the insults, always being called a demon. Here I have the respect I always wanted, he stated. As before, he closed his eyes and sat in the middle of the clearing. Sakura took a seat facing Naruto and closed her eyes before eventually breaking the tense silence. Sasuke's gonna kill me for saying this, but he wants you back almost as much as Hinata does. When he came to, he did his silent and fuming act for almost a month. He claims it's because no one else in the village can be a worthy opponent, but I think it's because you're his best friend. Naruto inquired, so he's alright then? Yeah, still the same Sasuke, Sakura said with a smile before becoming solemn once more. We've all been trying to find some loophole or overturn the council's decision. Without success, I see, declared Naruto bluntly. Sounds attacks on Konoha have been growing more destructive. Soon Konoha will be destroyed. We need your help, Sakura begged. Naruto rose to his feet and assumed a taijutsu stance, performing a number of practiced maneuvers. Sakura stood and observed him as well. Naruto told Sakura, I'll tell you what, evacuate Konoha and bring the villagers here, without deviating from his usual order. Sakura lost her temper and struck Naruto's head with a punch that was enhanced by chakra. Only sand remained after Naruto vanished, his form flickering. Sakura looked wildly around and found Naruto on the other side of the hollow. When did you learn that? She asked. About a year ago, Naruto replied. I'm heading back to the tower, you coming? Sakura nodded and followed. Nightmares tormented Naruto's sleeping mind that night. It started with the recollection of his altercation with Sasuke. In the Valley of the End, he was facing Sasuke, who was charging at Naruto while holding a flickering Chidori. As he approached, the Uchiha appeared to shrink, and Naruto noticed that he had transformed into a perfect replica of the nine-tailed fox, towering over Sasuke. As Sasuke struck him with his enormous paw, Naruto glanced down at him. Gazing at the blood leaking from beneath his paw, Naruto gazed. Raising his paw, he awoke with a shriek. He calmed down, lay down, and fell asleep after frantically scanning his room. When Naruto returned to Konoha, the streets were deserted. Naruto watched, frozen to the spot, as flames rushed past him, burning everything. Naruto looked up as the flames grew higher, engulfing the Hokage faces. The last image he saw was the stone faces crumbling and falling on the village. Naruto sat up in bed again. He saw the sun creeping over the mountains and abandoned any hopes of sleep. He got out of bed and dressed quickly before heading to the kitchen for breakfast. When he reached the kitchen, he was surprised to see Neji and Kiba already there. Naruto moaned, mourning, as he searched for the coffee. Neji pushed the coffee pot in Naruto's direction and asked bluntly, "Are you just going to let Orochimaru destroy Konoha?" Naruto almost dropped his mug in response, saying, "I told Sakura to evacuate Konoha and bring everyone here already, but I'm not going back there, never." What happened to the Naruto who wanted to become Hokage? The knucklehead who wouldn't hesitate to defend Konoha? Asked Kiba. That Naruto died in the desert 4 years ago, Naruto answered. Neji whispered, "You've really cut all your ties to Konoha." Kiba shouted, "What about Hinata? What about her? I can't believe how dense you are, you dumb ass." Kiba snarled as he bounded out of the kitchen. Bewildered, Naruto asked Neji, "What's up with him?" Neji shook his head without responding. Neji, Kiba, and Sakura persisted in their attempts to persuade Naruto to assist Konoha for a week. The group eventually had to head back to Konoha. At the gates, Gaara, Temari, and Kankuro bid farewell. Sakura turned back to Suna and remarked, "It's typical of Naruto to be late." Gaara pointed upwards and Sakura looked up to see Naruto sitting on the edge of the wall. He gave a nod of farewell when Sakura waved at him. Naruto observed his former companions depart. He waited until they were out of sight before they vanished in a wind carrying sand. The weight of the beam over his shoulder caused Naruto to grunt. Kankuro yelled, "Put your back into it," from behind. Naruto shouted behind him, "You put your back into it." Naruto had been enlisted to help build the temporary structures for the refugees. There would still be a significant overflow even if the village made as much room as it could. Other Suna ninjas were busy building all over the site. The beam slid off Naruto's shoulder and fell into the waiting hole as he and Kankuro knelt down and aligned it with the side of the makeshift house. Naruto joined Kankuro as he wiped the perspiration from his brow and took a seat in the shade of a nearby building. Naruto was given a bottle of water by Kankuro. While sipping his drink, Naruto inquired, "How many left?" "There are 2 here and 6 on the other side of the village," Kankuro said. "I reckon we'll be finished sometime next week." As Temari passed by with her fan strapped across her back as usual, they both looked up. Temari heard Kankuro say, "She's off on her travels again, avoiding real work, even though he didn't mean for her to." Temari saw the expression on Naruto's face and said, "Shut it, Kankuro. And don't you start Naruto." Before Temari could use her fan on the refugees, Naruto asked, "Any idea when the first refugees will arrive?" "Couple of weeks. I'll know more when I get there, and stay out of my room while I'm gone." Temari turned her back on the boys with that final command. Naruto and Kankuro reluctantly got to their feet again and walked over to the pile of waiting beams. "On 3, Naruto said as he grasped the end of a beam. Kankuro did the same. 1, 2, 3. They both groaned as they hoisted the beam onto their shoulders. The setting sun lit Suna in a pale orange glow. The blonde Jonin was relaxing, lying on the roof of the cage tower with his eyes shut and hands behind his head, after finishing the first set of temporary buildings. One of its few rains was being enjoyed by Suna. It was more of a dense mist that hung over the village than actual rain. He was on the roof with Gaara, who was also lounging in the fog. Gaara mumbled, "Temari should be back with the Konoha refugees soon." The bodiless voice of Kankuro said, "Cancel, soon," causing Naruto and Gaara to sit up. The puppet master landed next to the pair. "I just got word from Temari. She'll be here before the end of the week." Naruto lay back down as Gaara cursed. "Damn it. There's no way we'll be ready in time." He stood and made his way inside. "I want everyone working at double speed. No rest until the preparations are ready." Gaara's voice faded, leaving Naruto to his thoughts. Lulled by the rain and the cool air, Naruto soon drifted off to sleep. 24 hours later, Temari led the first of the refugees into Suna. Naruto studied the Konoha refugees from a nearby rooftop as they filed past. All were disheveled, walking slowly, and each was carrying large bags. Naruto didn't feel any sympathy for them as he watched them enter. He jumped off the roof and landed in the street. When he noticed Naruto leaving, one of the Konoha villagers grabbed a kunai from his belt and threw it at the blonde. He stumbled and nearly fell after the kunai hit him in the back. As he yanked out the blade, he turned to face the crowd again. "Demon!" A voice called out. The shout seemed to reverberate through the buildings, stopping the village. "Monster!" shouted someone else. All of the Suna villagers halted their activities and raised a variety of weapons. They moved around Naruto with ease. One of the Suna villagers yelled, "Leave Sunarashi-san alone." The Suna villagers prepared to attack as the man attempted to throw another kunai. Another member of the Konoha crowd screamed at the Suna villagers, "How can you sleep soundly at night with that monster here? We trust him with our lives." A wall of sand stopped another kunai from flying from the crowd. With red eyes, Naruto lunged at the Konoha crowd, only to find his feet stuck in more sand. He watched Gaara pass by and take a position between him and the refugees from Konoha. "You are guests in this village. If you cause trouble again, I will not hesitate to throw you back into the desert," said Gaara. "And if you ever hurt a member of my family again, I will make you regret the day you were born." "Are you all right?" asked Gaara as Naruto stood up. Naruto grinned and said, "I've had worse injuries shaving." Gaara and Naruto gave the crowd one last glare before turning to leave. When Temari finally caught up to them, she noticed that Naruto's jacket had blood on the back. "What happened?" Temari inquired, sounding like an anxious older sister. Seeing Temari's expression, Naruto remarked, "A kunai from someone who can't let go of the past," before adding, "I'm fine, really." Temari questioned, "Does their hatred for the fox really run that deep?" Naruto snarled, to them, "I'll always be the Kyuubi." Temari seized Naruto and pulled him toward the infirmary as the three of them entered the cage tower. Naruto objected, "I told you I'm fine," but Temari disregarded him and shoved the blonde through the doors of the infirmary. She summoned a medical nin and forced him to sit on one of the vacant beds. Before Naruto could raise another objection, the ninja yanked off his shirt and jacket. Naruto informed her, "Temari, you know I heal quickly." "I know, but I still want you looked at," she stated. "It's a big sister thing." As the medic kept checking his wound, Naruto shook his head. The medic covered the wound with a bandage once she was satisfied, then allowed Naruto to heal and leave. Naruto's ears pricked when he heard a familiar voice as he was leaving the infirmary. He listened more intently in an attempt to identify the person. Troublesome. Shikamaru was seated in a chair when Naruto turned the corner and entered Gaara's office. He demanded, "Shikamaru? What the hell are you doing here?" "I was roped in by Lady Tsunade, along with Shino and Choji to act as the escorts for the refugees," Shikamaru murmured, "and to deliver a message to Gaara." Naruto grinned and said, "Bodyguard and message boy. I heard you had trouble from the Konoha crowd." "It was nothing," answered Naruto. After Gaara finished reading Tsunade's letter, he put down the paper and focused on Temari, Kankuro, and Naruto. "They're requesting as many ninja of Chunin level and higher as we can spare," he informed them. Temari said, "I'll pack the gear," and walked away. Kankuro said, "I need to fix Karasu, give me half a day," and he departed as well. Shikamaru growled and turned to leave. "I'm going to hit the sack," he said. Gaara remarked, "Naruto, I won't order you to come, but if you want to you can," as Shikamaru walked out of headquarters. "But what about the council's warning, if I return I'll be killed," Naruto replied. Gaara assured him, "I won't allow them to touch a member of my family." Naruto said, "I'll think about it," and disappeared. In order to get to the location of one of the temporary structures, Naruto hefted a support beam onto his shoulder and partially carried and partially dragged it. To distract himself from the Konoha refugees, he needed to be occupied. Naruto glanced over his shoulder and saw Choji. "Need a hand?" someone asked. Choji assisted Naruto in carrying the beam to the location by lifting the other end. After positioning the beam, Naruto turned to face Choji. Wiping perspiration from his face, he said, "Decided to help while you're here?" Shikamaru said I should. Naruto turned back to Choji after taking a quick look at the sun high in the sky. "Want to break for lunch, as if I really need to ask." "No," said Choji with a smile, "you don't have to ask." After leading the group through a few streets, Naruto arrived at an outdoor eatery. As Naruto and Choji sat there, the proprietor grinned at them. 2 big bowls of ramen were brought over by the proprietor after a few minutes. It didn't take them long to finish the bowls after both ninja got to eating. Naruto said, "Good ramen, but not a patch on Ichiraku," putting down his chopsticks. Suddenly, Choji asked, "Do you miss Konoha?" "There are things that I miss. Rain that's not just a mist, the hot springs, Ichiraku's. And I miss some of the people too. Iruka, Sensei and Granny Tsunade, Pervy, Sage." Naruto became absorbed in his recollections, and their conversation stalled. As Naruto assumed his guard position at the gates, a dust storm was raging around Suna. The wind shifted and blew directly into his face, causing him to cough and splutter. "I hate guard duty." Naruto spit sand into his mouth and muttered to himself. Something shifted in the whirling dust, and Naruto's ears perked up. He looked out into the storm but saw nothing. Borisome, Naruto leaned against the wall. Something blasted through the sandstorm just as he was about to fall asleep. Curiosity won out, and Naruto cautiously entered the storm, his eyes darting around. He hurled himself at a form in the dust and struck a solid sand wall. Naruto recognized the shape as Gaara after looking through the whirling dust. Naruto shouted into the wind, "What are you doing out here, Gaara?" Gaara said, "Something isn't right," but his voice was nearly muffled by the sandstorm. The sand around the two heaved and trembled as the wind abruptly dropped. A kunai exploded from the sand to Naruto's side, and he ducked. Naruto was sand. Shedding as a ninja blasted at him. A wall of sand prevented him from ramming a blade into Naruto. Ambush! Naruto screamed as he fled. From the sand, more ninja emerged, until there were easily 20. Gaara threw the captured ninja back into the throng. The most courageous ninja lunged towards Naruto, who fled behind him and kicked him in the head. His leg was grabbed by the ninja as it spun around. The enemy's speed caught Naruto off guard. Naruto was flung into a dune by the enemy. With a growl, Naruto launched himself at the ninja once more. Then he threw a kunai and was gone. Naruto came and went, each time hurling a kunai at the adversary. The ninja ended up looking like a pincushion for kunai, despite his speed. Gaara swept up 2 of the ninja in the sand and crushed them while Naruto dodged a blow from another adversary. As 3 ninja charged at him, Naruto swore and tried to disappear, but a huge hand materialized and slammed them into the sand. After flitting, Naruto found himself next to Choji. Shikamaru stopped another ninja in his tracks as he charged at Naruto. Shikamaru grinned as he used his own shadow to crush the enemy's throat. "Lights out," he said. Naruto saw a recognizable figure of Karasu land and strike multiple ninja with blades. As he appeared, Kankuro said, "Someone order backup?" From among the fallen foes, Shikamaru selected the sound headband. Choji snarled, "I don't think these guys followed us out here." "Here I go," Naruto exclaimed, conjuring a clone with a pool of chakra in his hand. The others retreated after realizing what was about to happen. Naruto screamed, "Rasengan," and charged, slicing through the remaining foes. When they realized they were losing, the others dispersed, abandoning their fallen comrades in their wake. Naruto approached Gaara with a gloomy look on his face. "I've decided. I'm coming with you, Temari and Kankuro, back to Konoha." Overhearing Naruto's words, Shikamaru questioned, "What happened to never going back?" "Things change," answered Naruto. Outside the cage tower, Naruto waited restlessly with Kankuro, Temari, Choji, Shikamaru, Shino, and several Suna ninja. He left the group, returned, and took a seat on one of the weapon boxes that were awaiting the reinforcements. "Something wrong?" smirked Kankuro. As Gaara came out of the tower, Naruto simply kicked his feet in the sand without responding. Gaara commanded, "Suna shinobi, move out," and led the group out of the village. Taking one of the boxes, Naruto joined the throng of ninja making their way to the Hidden Leaf village. As the person convoy departed the village, Choji turned to Shikamaru. He uttered the words, "Hinata will be happy we got Naruto back," quietly. Naruto looked back as his ears perked up. "Speaking of Hinata, why was she so broken up by my leaving?" Shaking his head in shock, Shikamaru said, "You are by far the densest shinobi in the entire world." The convoy moved steadily through the land of wind. The ground began to cool after a few days of walking, and finally they entered grassland near the boundary between fire and wind. The group kept walking until they came to the edge of the forest that encircled Konoha. As night fell, they halted and camped beneath one of the biggest trees. Naruto ran the short distance to the tree's base and continued up to the highest branch while the camp was being set up. He gazed out over the sea of trees while perched on the branch. The forest was illuminated by a faint glow in the distance. That light was Konoha, he knew. "Is this what I should be doing?" "What?" he asked himself. "I'm going to assist them now that they threw me out." Unaware that multiple pairs of eyes were observing him, Naruto struggled with his emotions at the summit of the tree. Temari, Kankuro, and Gaara couldn't take their eyes off the blonde in the sky. Temari snarled, "The village better not try anything tomorrow," and then she entered her tent. Gaara was left alone in the firelight as Kankuro retired some time after Temari. After waiting for Naruto to descend again, the former Tanuki entered his tent as well. Naruto climbed the tree for nearly the entire night, only descending after dozing off and almost falling. As the gates to Konoha emerged, the Suna party decelerated, and Naruto gazed at the gate. The once sturdy gates were partially burned and cracked. Every building he could see was damaged in some way, with doors broken or missing entirely as he peered past the gates into Konoha. The walls were missing chunks of stone, as though the houses had been eaten by some enormous creature. Naruto's gaze shifted to the throng of people advancing on the Suna party, with Danzo, Jiraiya, and Tsunade leading the way. As soon as Danzo saw Naruto standing between Kankuro and Temari, he stopped talking. "Welcome to Konoha, Lord Kazekage," he said to Gaara. "We thank you for your help in this difficult." Danzo yelled, "You," and called forth an Anbu squad. The lead Anbu charged at Naruto, followed by the others. "Uzumaki Naruto, you were banished from this village 4 years ago. Your return is your death warrant," he said. As they prepared to attack, they raised kunai and other weapons. As 3 puppets emerged in a cloud of smoke, a wall of sand encircled Naruto, shielding him and threatening to submerge the Anbu. As the other Suna ninja pulled out their own weapons, Temari waved her fan threateningly. Then Gaara hissed murderously, "Keep your hands off my brother." Then Tsunade stumbled, Brother?" It would be an understatement to say that she and the others were perplexed. "You banished him, we took him in. He is a part of our family now," Temari said in a voice that was equally menacing. "And if you touch him, not only will I kill every one of you, but the alliance between Suna and Konoha will be dissolved," Gaara went on. Gaara's sand retreated as the lead Anbu swallowed and backed away. But was Danzo's attempt to protest. Tsunade cut in, "I need a drink." "I'm barely here 5 minutes and you're already drinking," Naruto said with a grin. "Some things never change." Grinning, Tsunade cuffed the blonde fox over the head. She grinned and said, "Welcome home, brat. Tsunade and Jiraiya led the Suna reinforcements, Shikamaru, Choji, and Shino to the Hokage mansion, while a very irritated Danzo trailed behind. 7 of the Konoha 12 were already gathered outside the Hokage's office when the party arrived. Hinata was hiding behind her cousin when Naruto's eyes saw the flash of white and purple. Everyone crammed themselves into Tsunade's office with some difficulty. As you all know, Orochimaru's attacks are becoming more destructive by the day and we can't defend ourselves for much longer without assistance. Anyway, with your help, we can mount an effective counterattack, Tsunade concluded. We're ready to do our part in defending, Gaara said, folding his arms. Who said I would help? Naruto cut in. Everyone in the room was staring at him. Danzo insisted, if you're not going to help, then why did you come back? Naruto said, I'm not sure myself, maybe just to see this village one last time before it's flattened, with a somber tone. Sakura snarled and several mouths fell open in surprise. She screamed, you jackass, as she moved toward him. Naruto gave her a chilly look before performing his disappearance act. He appeared outside the workplace and started to leave for the village. Sakura stormed out of Tsunade's office, searching frantically for Naruto. As 2 men turned the corner, the blonde turned to leave but froze. While the other had brown hair and a scar across the bridge of his nose, the taller one had only one eye visible and spiky silver hair. Naruto began to move in their direction once more, but he stopped when he noticed someone standing behind Iruka and Kakashi. The Uchiha fan on his shoulder was the final nail in the coffin, but the raven hair and nearly black eyes were definitely there. Hi Sasuke, Naruto said with a tense smile as he arrived at the trio. Sasuke gazed at Naruto with emotionless, dark eyes. With Hinata and Ino watching over her shoulder, Sakura lingered in the background, prepared to quickly retreat back into the office if necessary. Iruka and Kakashi appeared prepared to step in if things got out of hand. Hi, Sasuke, Naruto stumbled, echoing Hinata's voice. After shaking his head, Sasuke passed Naruto. He muttered, idiot, as he went by. As Sasuke proceeded up the hallway, Naruto calmed down. The gap between Iruka and Naruto was reduced. Naruto said, Iruka. Sensei, grinning. Iruka gave Naruto a head cuff, but not as firmly as Tsunade had. Iruka reprimanded, you could have let us know you were alright, but he wasn't sincere. Leaning over Iruka, Naruto peered at the masked Jonin standing behind him. Hi Kakashi. Sensei. Still have trouble arriving on time, I see. It's clear that even 4 years of banishment can't change Konoha's #1 knucklehead ninja. Naruto's grin disappeared, giving way to a frown. Without saying another word, he swept past Kakashi. From Naruto's back, Iruka and Kakashi exchanged glances. Kakashi questioned Iruka, what did I say? After glancing across the rooftops, Naruto bounded up the closest wall and bounded out of the mansion. Naruto found it odd to be bound across the same roofs as he had when he was still a member of Konoha. The lack of villagers made him uncomfortable. As he flew past every location he was familiar with from his genin days, memories he had long suppressed suddenly erupted and cluttered his thoughts. He descended to street level and began to walk past the Hyuga and Uchiha compounds, as well as Ichiraku. It appeared as though Naruto had no control over his feet as they led him down the streets he knew well. It was eerily quiet as he passed the academy, which is typically bustling with pre-genin students. Lost in his thoughts, Naruto kept moving through the village. He became aware that he was in the woods that surrounded the training area. When Naruto came out of the trees, he saw the hero memorial and the 3 posts just as he had remembered. After flitting, he landed on the middle post and took a seat. The memory of Kakashi tying him to the post and declaring that he, Sakura, and Sasuke would never be shinobi made Naruto laugh as he glanced down absently. Looks like I proved you wrong, Kakashi. Sensei, he laughed. He gave himself a shake. I refuse to allow sentimentality to control my thoughts, he pondered. They deserved all of this, which is why they exiled me. Naruto focused and closed his eyes, falling into a slumbering state. In his mind, he was making the last adjustments to an idea, but to the outside world, he might have been meditating. He was startled back to reality by a bird's call. He leapt from the post and implemented his concept. Forcing his chakra, which is based on wind, into his hands. He began to run. He molded the chakra into 2 sharp blades, one in each hand, and hurried back into the trees. As he went by, he slashed at the trees, causing the trunks to become severely cut. Kicking up, he bounced off the trees and entered the canopy. With his momentum, Naruto continued to soar upward after breaking through the sea of leaves. As he gazed out over the village, he appeared to float in midair. He looked down at his old house for a very long time before he fell again. After landing on a branch, he launched himself again, using it as a springboard. He jumped lower and lower as he continued to spring through the trees. He descended to ground level again and turned to return the way he had come. After skidding back into the training area, Naruto swung his arm in a wide arc, striking the target tree with a shockwave imposed by chakra. A hairline cut appeared in the trunk, and the entire tree slid to the left after a brief period of inaction. There was an ear-splitting crash as it hit the ground. A familiar voice said, "Impressive power and speed," after the noise subsided, causing Naruto to turn. Sakura and Sasuke stood beside Kakashi, who was standing a short distance away. Naruto turned to his friends and cut off the chakra flow to the blades in his hands. Naruto questioned, "Not quite the Naruto you remember?" Under his mask, Kakashi grinned and nodded. "Tell you what, Naruto, how about you show me how much you've changed?" Looking up at the sky, Naruto sounded almost bored. "Only you, Kakashi? Sensei? That wouldn't be much fun." "Well, what about me and Sasuke?" "All right," Naruto said. "Taijutsu only, and I'll allow you to use your Sharingan." The three shinobi assumed a fighting stance, and Sakura retreated. As Kakashi lifted his headband, Sasuke's eyes glowed with the Sharingan's blood red. Kakashi said, "You sure about this?" After nodding, Naruto produced 6 clones, just as Sasuke and Kakashi had instructed. In a whirl of sand, the clones all smirked and vanished. As each of the clones sped past them, leaving sand in their wake, Kakashi and Sasuke gazed. They were unable to match Naruto's speed, even with their Sharingan. Naruto's fist struck the back of Sasuke's head, knocking him forward. Naruto vanished in a cloud of smoke as Sasuke spun around and slammed his fist into him. He growled. "Damn, just a clone," he said. "Keep on your toes," Kakashi advised. "We have no idea what new tricks he's learned." 2 Narutos attempted to kick Kakashi's feet out from under him, but instead kicked each other in the head and vanished in a cloud of smoke. So Kakashi took a step back. Naruto disappeared after Sasuke ducked another blow and pounded his fist into him. The shadow clones soon annoyed him, and he screamed at the still, moving mass of sand. "Stop hiding, idiot, and fight me." In response, Naruto landed in front of Sasuke and Kakashi. At the last second, he ducked to the left and charged at Sasuke. He firmly planted one foot in Kakashi's back and the other on Sasuke's ankle. Naruto attempted to slam his foot into Sasuke after kicking off Kakashi. Sasuke dodged, causing his fist to fly out and strike Naruto in the face. After a moment of shock, Naruto vanished in a cloud of smoke. Sasuke, with Sharingan still blazing, looked around wildly. He insisted, "Where is he?" "He always was a trickster," Kakashi said with a smile, pulling his headband back over his left eye. "I think he left at the start." With a smile on his face after giving Sasuke, Kakashi, and Sakura the slip once more, Naruto returned to the village. He strolled through the oddly empty streets of Konoha. "Just as if I had never left," he pondered. He eventually found his old apartment by following his feet. After a minute of hesitation during which his hand touched the doorknob, he went inside. He pushed the door open and looked at the layout and furniture, which were nearly the same as they had been 4 years prior. Naruto heard a voice behind him and spun around. In the doorway stood Hinata. Her blushing wasn't shocking to Naruto. Stuttering, she said, Naruto." Naruto grinned and said, "Hey Hinata, long time no see," before turning to face his former residence. "Hasn't changed much in 4 years," he sighed. I've been looking after it and keeping it tidy." Puzzled, Naruto turned back to Hinata. "When you left, I decided to look after your apartment for when you came back." "Why?" he inquired naively. Because Naruto, Hinata's blush intensified. Naruto's attention was immediately drawn to the source of the noise, while Hinata was unaware of the rumble of a distant explosion. In a whirl of sand, he disappeared. Finally, Hinata said, "I love you." Her words drifted through the now vacant apartment. Via the opening in the city wall of Konoha, sound ninja were pouring in. Naruto watched from the top of the Hokage faces as Konoha and Suna ninja moved to repel them. From the vast throng of Konoha and Suna ninja, his eyes recognized the familiar shapes of his friends. The 2 armies clashed and began fighting, with jutsu and explosions occasionally scattering the horde of ninja. As a lightning bolt carved a path through the forces of sound, he witnessed a fireball that could only have been created by Sasuke engulfing a large number of enemies. Suddenly, Naruto heard the sound of the battle. He recoiled when he heard a female voice shriek in agony amid the cries and screams of both friends and enemies. He kept watching the battle, but he had to turn his head away when the Konoha and Suna forces began to be driven back by the sheer number of enemies. Naruto turned away from the cries and started to move away, but he stopped when a shrill scream rang in his ears. Though he wasn't positive, he was fairly certain it was Hinata's scream. Naruto growled and spun around, running to the edge of the Hokage faces. "Screw it," he said. He threw himself into the air. When he heard Kunoichi move inadvertently into his path of descent, a smile appeared on his face. The Kunoichi lifted a katana to attack a Konoha Chunin, but Naruto's 2 feet struck her head, sending her crashing to the ground. Naruto disappeared and entered the battle as soon as he hit the ground. With so many ninja closing in on him, Gaara was struggling to stay ahead. Almost immediately after he flooded a number with his sand, more appeared. Karasu threw blades in all directions as he charged into the enemy swarm. After slamming her fan into an enemy, Temari opened it and sent a hurricane. Force wind into the Sound Army by whipping it around in a fluid motion. She shouted to Gaara, "Where are they coming from?" "I have no idea," he said, swatting aside another ninja. Gaara couldn't swing his sand quickly enough to capture every enemy ninja that came at him from the opposite direction. A burst of sandy wind dispersed the remaining sound ninja, and Naruto emerged beside Gaara. Naruto grinned and said, "Gaara, I think we need to change the field." A cloud of sand formed over Konoha, and Gaara nodded. The Sound.Nin were knee deep in sand before they realized what was happening, so they had no time to react. They were immediately attacked by the Konoha forces. While Sasuke's lightning-covered fist punched through another enemy's chest, Sakura's fist struck the ground, sending a sizable group of enemy ninja into the air. As more adversaries rushed in, he threw the body aside. A blonde sandstorm came and attacked before either of them could respond. The swarm was easily dispatched by Naruto's chakra blades, which he used to plant both blades in a sound ninja's chest before flickering away to attack another enemy. Sakura was confronted by a Sound.Nin who had survived Naruto's attack. He attempted to ram a kunai into her chest, but Naruto stopped him. Sakura caught a fleeting glimpse of Naruto before he disappeared once more, leaving behind a trail of sand. A green blur that he recognized as Rock Lee was approaching him as he leapt over roofs and up a wall. As Lee's foot sent another Sound.Nin through a wall, Neji's palm struck a Sound Nin's chest, causing him to fall to the ground. The sheer volume of enemies gathering made Neji curse. "There are too many of them," he said with a grunt, getting ready. The two shinobi caught a glimpse of what seemed to be a humanoid sandstorm speeding past them as they looked up. Moving at Lee's pace, Naruto slammed into the Sound.Nin, sending them flying. Naruto disappeared in a cloud of sand after a Sound.Nin punched him. He reappeared behind the Sound.Nin and planted both feet in the small of his back. As Naruto defeated the Sound.Nin, Neji and Lee gazed on in awe. As the bodies hit the ground around him, he landed in the middle of the street, crouching low. For a moment, he glanced up at Lee and Neji before disappearing. Lee questioned, "Was that Naruto?" "I'm not sure," said Neji. As he rushed through the fight, Naruto continued to eliminate Sound Ninja one after another. He located a single adversary and, with a ruthless grin, called forth 4 clones. He whispered to himself, "Let's see if I can still do this," while his clones surrounded the Sound.Nin. The clones screamed, "Na! Ru! 2!" as they kicked the Sound.Nin into the air and skidded low. Naruto threw himself into the air and struck the Sound Nin's face with his heel. Naruto finished Uzumaki Barrage and landed beside the crushed adversary. Instead of pausing to catch his breath, Naruto immediately resumed fighting. He heard a cry and instinctively ducked out of the line of fire as he hurried past other adversaries. Summoning Jutsu. Bring down the house. Numerous enemies were scattered and crushed when a huge toad slammed into them. The toad Sannin was on a nearby roof when Naruto's eyes looked around for the summoner. He kicked a Sound Ninja off the roof. "Hey there, pervy sage," he shouted over the battle. Jiraiya called, "Naruto, I heard you were back in town," upon seeing the blonde. As the enemy regrouped and advanced once more, Naruto turned to face the battle. Naruto's eyes flashed red as he growled, "Pervy sage, you and the others might want to get to a safe distance." Jiraiya gave a nod and struggled through the throng. As Jiraiya assisted the ally ninja in retreating, Naruto punched another Sound Ninja into the ground. Kakashi turned to face Jiraiya after landing on the roof that served as a rallying point. "Any idea what's going on?" Naruto's probably going to do something dangerous and stupid again. Gaara landed with a portion of the Konoha force and placed a wounded sand ninja on the rooftop. As the remaining Konoha forces retreated, out of his line of sight, Naruto glared at the adversary. From a safe distance, Kakashi and Sakura selected the sand-colored jacket while Naruto smiled malevolently. As the sound.nin moved forward, he pointed his palms down. As the others looked on, sand swirled around Naruto, and Kakashi's Sharingan identified his wind-based chakra in the sand. You are about to see the other reason why Naruto gained the name Sandstorm, Gaara stated. Before the whirling sand nearly obscured him, Jiraiya saw the Rasengan materialize in his hands. Naruto shouted, "Tsunarashi Rasengan," and bounded forward, leaving a sandy trail behind him. The entire team was engulfed when the chakra ball collided with the lead ninja and burst into a tornado of sand. From the dome-shaped sandstorm, Kakashi was certain it was the Rasen Shuriken. As the chakra-fueled sandstorm subsided, Naruto reappeared. Orochimaru stopped and gazed over the city from the top of the city wall of Konoha, where he sensed a clear chakra signature. He thought to himself, so the fox has returned. Behind Orochimaru, 6 ninja emerged, their faces obscured by the encroaching darkness. One of them responded, "Lord Orochimaru, our forces are being driven back," as the last of the fading sun reflected off their circular glasses. As he spoke, Orochimaru remained motionless. "Recall the troops. We'll attack again at first light." The 6 ninja bowed and disappeared once more. Smoke rose from many places throughout the Leaf Village as the last of the fires were doused. Teams of ninja searched the village, carrying the wounded to the makeshift command center, a set of tents in the middle of the village. The Hokage Mansion, Ninja Academy, hospital and any other building large enough to house the forces having been heavily damaged by the assault. The hurriedly erected campsite had been placed on the site of a former block of houses that was now just rubble. Moans and screams floated from under the white canvas as Naruto carried an Anbu towards the tent. He pushed inside and stopped short, the huge tent filled with row upon row of folding cots, and almost all of them held an injured Konoha or Suna shinobi. Between the victims, medical ninja raced. Naruto found an empty bed, and when he looked up, Sakura and Hinata were there. Green chakra was streaming over Hinata's hands as she knelt beside a bed. The green glow flickered and dimmed, and she cursed. Crossing over to her, Naruto put his hands over hers. "Tell her to use my chakra," he said. After giving him a fierce blush, Hinata turned back to her patient. He felt the chakra flow into Hinata's hands as he pushed it into his own, and he saw her use it to heal the ninja. Following the ninja's recovery, Hinata muttered an excuse and disappeared. Sakura approached Naruto, wiping her hands and face. "I thought you were going to let Orochimaru destroy Konoha," she replied. Things change. When Sakura and Naruto eventually emerged from the medical tent, the navy of twilight had replaced the burnt orange of sunset. Sakura had insisted on examining him after she had caught him. They located the mess tent after she guided him through the assortment of other tents. They both went inside and got a bite to eat. Sakura chastised Naruto for the meager amount of food, saying, "We have to ration and prioritize the little resources we have. Patients are first priority." Naruto asked no one in particular, "Why'd I suddenly wish a sound ninja had managed to hit me?" Sakura shook her head and walked away, searching for a place to sit. Other ninja were dispersed throughout the tent, and Sakura and Naruto looked through the crowd until they came across some of their friends. Around a small fire, Neji, Shikamaru, Ino, Choji, and Kiba were eating. Sakura and Naruto joined them, and they looked around. "Damn, I'm beat," Shikamaru moaned, shoulder flexing. Around a mouthful of food, Kiba remarked, "That attack was brutal, even by Orochimaru's standards." Akamaru, behind Kiba, barked in agreement. "I took down almost 200 enemies," Lee said upon his arrival, "and I shall do the same again next time they attack, or I shall run 300 laps. "Don't you ever get tired?" Naruto interrupted. "Never. The power of youth gives me all the energy I need." "Lee, shut up and eat," Tenten told him as she sat next to Neji. The group fell silent as they resumed eating. Sakura finished her food. She saw Naruto was sitting with hunched shoulders as she set down her tray. She questioned, "What's wrong with you?" "I'm cold," complained Naruto. "It's the middle of summer, even the nights are scorching," Sasuke whispered. "It may have escaped your notice, Sasuke, but I have been living in the desert for the past 4 years. Shikamaru retorted, "But the nights are colder in a desert." The buildings, rocks and sand soak up the heat during the day, then keep the village warm during the night. The talking faded again, but the atmosphere was lighter this time. Naruto wandered aimlessly through the campsite village. He looked up into the sky as thunder rolled overhead. He watched the black clouds massing on the horizon for a minute, then went back to wandering. Looking up to the Hokage faces, he thought about climbing up there again but dismissed the thought. Knowing my luck, I'd probably be hit by lightning. Naruto saw Gaara, Temari and Kankuro and moved to join them. Kankuro was cursing under his breath as he tried to fix one of his puppets and apparently failing. Temari offered Naruto a water flask as he sat. He took it and drank. Gaara moaned. That attack seemed a bit over the top. Naruto handed the flask to Gaara and concurred, saying, Orochimaru seems desperate to destroy Konoha. I heard the Konoha forces talking. They were in awe of your speed and power. Temari smiled. Naruto didn't react to Temari's words, but secretly he was grinning from ear to ear. He finally had the respect he'd craved from his genin days. But there was still a lagging doubt in the back of his mind. Did they admire him or just his power? The occasional chirrup of a cricket was the only sound in the moonlit training grounds. Once more, Naruto was perched atop the central post. He formed the blade with his left hand by concentrating chakra there. Naruto concentrated on the blade, trying to make it longer and sharper. The blue chakra crept forward. As the chakra faded and the edges flickered, he cursed. As they stepped into the clearing, someone remarked, that form of chakra has a specific length at which it can no longer maintain its shape. When Naruto turned to face Sasuke, the source of the voice, he turned back to his hand and began training once more, directing chakra into it. With a shrug, Sasuke took a seat at the foot of another post. Naruto abandoned his training and gazed up at the sky filled with stars. He recalled the beginning of this, when he was reading the letter from Tsunade back in Suna. A random thought appeared in his mind as he mentally reread the letter. Hey Sasuke, you got any idea why Hinata was moping around the village while I was gone? He asked. You really are an idiot, Sasuke sighed. She missed you because she likes you. So, you, Kakashi, Sensei, Iruka, Sensei and Sakura must have missed me too. Why should she be any different? Sasuke moaned to himself. I'll explain it to you. Why even bother? Sasuke got up and said, Hinata likes you the same as you used to like Sakura. And the way Sakura, Ino and almost every other girl in the village like me. The question, how do you know that, made Naruto blush. Please Naruto, she practically stalked you. You'd have to be blind or as dense as you are not to notice her. The blonde stopped talking as she considered Sasuke's words. The more he considered Hinata, the clearer it became. After realizing he had reached Naruto, Sasuke took a seat once more. Recalling Hinata's attempt to communicate with him prior to the battle, Naruto pondered for a minute more before striking himself in the head. Muted, I am such a dummy, he said. Sasuke grinned as he looked up to see a sandy cloud where Naruto had been. Finally we agree on something, he said. Sitting around the fire's dying embers were Hinata, Shino, Kiba, and Akamaru. Depression and exhaustion caused Hinata's body to sag. When she finally found the confidence to express her feelings for Naruto, he disappeared before she could do so. When Naruto appeared behind Hinata and seized her by the waist, Akamaru yawned and his ears perked up. Before Shino and Kiba could respond, Naruto said, Hey guys. I need to borrow Hinata. Thanks, bye, and disappeared, taking Hinata with him. Naruto, exclaimed Kiba. On top of the wall enclosing the village, Naruto and Hinata made a second appearance. Hinata turned to face Naruto after he released her. Naruto. She stumbled. Why did you bring me here? So we could talk without being interrupted again. He grinned. Now, what were you going to tell me this morning? Hinata said, I wanted to tell you, as her face turned beetroot. Her voice trailed off and she turned to face her feet, her fringe concealing her eyes. She was forced to look into Naruto's face when she felt two fingers touch her chin and tilt her head up. I think I know what you want to say, Naruto replied, a friend explained to me. Hinata's face flushed even more, and she attempted to turn away once more, but Naruto prevented her from doing so. Instead, he pulled her closer. When she realized he was talking again, she made herself pay attention. I'm not sure I feel exactly the same as you do, but give me time. When Hinata realized her face was only an inch away from his, she felt dizzy. He tightened his arm around her waist once more, and she winced. Proceed. In the back of her mind, a small voice spoke. For once in your life, take a chance. Hinata gulped, closed her eyes and closed the distance between their faces. Naruto was surprised when Hinata kissed him, but he quickly got over it. Hinata broke away after a second, mumbling an apology. Naruto didn't let her go, just kept holding her. After getting used to the man she'd had a crush on since the academy holding her, she relaxed and rested her head against Naruto's shoulder. Naruto let Hinata go and they sat, looking out over the sea of trees. Hinata's small hand found Naruto's and their fingers locked. As Hinata turned red once more and turned her head away, Naruto smiled and asked, "Hinata, did you really stalk me? I should stop teasing, but you're really cute when you're embarrassed." Until the black sky began to turn gray and then yellow, they remained atop the wall. The faint sound of ninja running caused Naruto and Hinata's heads to turn together. "Warn the village. I'll hold them off," Naruto growled. The sound ninja in the lead smirked as the walls of Konoha loomed over him. He was going to be the first to enter Konoha and start the massacre. Lord Orochimaru would reward him for his bravery and... The ninja's thoughts ceased as both of Naruto's fists slammed into his head and drove him into the ground. Naruto pursued after the squad that had been pursuing him dispersed. After slamming his chakra blades into one foe, Naruto hurried after another. Having outwitted their leader, these ninja dispersed in various directions. After scattering the enemy, Naruto sent a horde of clones. She ran off, and he followed another sound ninja. When Naruto emerged from a thicket of bushes, his eyes widened. He was greeted by a horde of enemy ninja. Gritting his teeth, Naruto launched himself into the swarm of enemies. As the first foe was struck by Naruto's fists and blades, thunder shook the sky. In an attempt to create a one-man barrier between Konoha and the enemy, he darted between ninjas as quickly as he could. But they gradually pushed him back, more due to the sheer force of numbers than anything else. A shinobi with raven hair, accompanied by a pink-haired kunoichi and multiple Anbu squads, landed beside Naruto and asked, "Having fun?" Naruto gave Sasuke a scowl. He grabbed a sound ninja by the arm and used him to knock the rest of his team off their feet while shouting, "Shut up and help me." Naruto ducked out of the way as Sasuke's hands moved in a familiar pattern. Fire style, fireball jutsu. The heavens parted as the fireball died, and rain fell on the conflict, swiftly combining with the blood of the dead to create a bloody muck. The enemy exploited Naruto's moment of distraction when he slipped in the mud. Naruto was buried beneath a black mass of bodies as the wave of sound ninja overtook him. A deep, feral growl stopped Sakura and Sasuke in their tracks. They felt it more than heard it. A second before it actually happened, Sasuke realized what was going to happen. He barely had time to seize Sakura and escape the line of fire before a burst of crimson chakra scattered the ninja horde. With his eyes blood red, his whisker scars widened, and his body covered in chakra in the shape of a tail, Naruto emerged from the swarm. Naruto attacked the enemy when they stumbled. He decimated their numbers by literally tearing into the ranks. As the remaining strike force divided into three groups, some pursuing him and the others pursuing Sakura and Naruto, Sasuke retreated. The unique Mangekyo Sharingan emerged from the flickering and morphing Uchiha's Sharingan. As the ninja was engulfed in a surge of black flames, Naruto happened to glance back. When the fox's bloodlust took over once more, he charged back into the fight. Sakura slammed her fist into the ground after assessing an enemy squad. As the ground shattered and fell into the canyon Sakura had made, the squad was thrown skyward. Sasuke appeared at the other end of the gash in the earth. Earth style. Great Mud River. Sasuke yelled over the thunder. The screams of the sound ninja were smothered as they were buried alive. Sakura smashed her fist against an enemy on her left, sending him flying through the trees. Naruto roared as he rushed through the enemy ninja, dispatching them left and right. He leapt and landed on a nearby tree before shooting like a red bullet through the sound army. A squad attempting to ambush him was the target of Sasuke's bloody gaze. As Tsukiyomi went into effect, they froze and fell to the ground. A ninja was seized by Sakura, who then swung him over her head and onto the ground. When Naruto realized that no more enemies were pursuing him, his anger subsided. As he approached Sasuke and Sakura, his chakra tail waned and his eyes returned to their typical blue color. The wind dropped and the rain subsided as if on cue. Naruto demanded of Sasuke, "When did you get the Mangekyo Sharingan?" "Back in the Valley of the End, during our second fight when you beat the hell out of me. I used Chidori against you and, technically, I killed you. The only way to unlock the Mangekyo Sharingan is to kill your best friend, but since you came back, I have a different version than Itachi. So far it looks like I won't lose my sai." I don't know, but maybe it's the guilt of killing the best friend that causes the sight loss. Naruto smiled and said, well, now that this is over with, let's go and get ramen. Idiot, sighed Sasuke. The Konoha ninja made their way back to their village while a group of 4 ninja kept a safe distance. Lord Orochimaru will not be pleased, the group's largest member muttered. The lone girl began, damn right he won't, he's gonna be pissed. Watch your language, the large man cut her off. The ninja dangling upside down from a branch that hung over it said, so what do we do? We'll have to take them out, murmured the last member of the ensemble. This voice sounded exactly like the other, as though he were speaking to himself. But brother, last time we fought them we lost, he said. Are you forgetting that Lord Orochimaru has given us new powers to slaughter his enemies? The upside down ninja said, we had better report, and proceeded to crack his 3 sets of knuckles. The others gave a nod of agreement and disappeared. As he guided Sakura, Sasuke, and the Anbu members back into Konoha, Naruto stretched. After the group split up, Naruto discovered Hinata waiting for him. He approached her and extended his hand, grinning. Hinata took the offered hand and they walked off together. Naruto yawned as looked for somewhere to sleep. He found a spot under a tree. Leaning against the trunk, he sat after guiding Hinata over to it. Naruto closed his eyes and fell asleep after yawning once more. His head slipped and rested against Hinata's shoulder. Hinata smiled at Naruto before she also closed her eyes. But the two were unaware that a young girl with lavender eyes was observing them. He was booted back to the remnants of his squad after Naruto slammed his head against one of the sound ninjas. Sasuke launched a series of great dragonfire blasts after the remaining ninja, who turned and ran. When Neji struck a resolute sound ninja with his open palm, the ninja choked and fell to the ground. After walking back to the village, the 3 ninja turned their backs on the devastation they had caused. Naruto couldn't shake the sensation that Sasuke, Neji, and himself were being watched while they were walking. He rolled his shoulders and stretched as the village walls appeared, and he was able to get rid of his worries. Naruto moaned, man, Orochimaru isn't letting up, as his left shoulder cracked. They went their separate ways after entering the village. As Naruto swerved through the ninja, he heard a scream and froze. How the hell did we lose almost 3 entire Anbu squads? Tsunade screamed as Shizune wisely ducked for cover. Naruto flickered, dodging a chunk of rubble that Tsunade hurled in her anger. The survivors report that they were attacked by a 4-man cell. Apparently each of the members of the team had a curse mark, Shizune said, still hiding. Naruto decided to follow Shizune's example and moved out of the firing line. He saw Hinata and walked over to her. Naruto whispered, Hinata, may I speak with you? Somewhere private. After giving Naruto a nod, Hinata put her hand in his. He led the way through the village until they reached the training grounds. Hinata was puzzled until Naruto started speaking. Hinata, before we become any closer, I want you to know something about me. Hinata looked into Naruto's face. Do you know the story of the 9-tailed fox that attacked the village almost 18 years ago? Hinata gave a nod. Well, the Yondaime managed to defeat the fox, but at the cost of his life, by sealing it within a newborn baby. Naruto interrupted, that baby was me. As Naruto lifted his shirt to reveal the spiral seal, the proof, Hinata's eyes widened. Naruto dropped his shirt back down and looked away from Hinata. Naruto was forced to look at Hinata this time. Naruto saw only her love for him, even though he had expected her eyes to be filled with hate or loathing. So that's why the villagers hated you. They thought you were the 9-tails. Naruto gave a nod. And during the fight with Sasuke, the fox must have taken control of you to save itself. You really don't care that I'm a demon vessel? Naruto swallowed hard. Hinata whispered, you are Naruto, and that's all I care about, as she drew nearer. Naruto also came closer to Hinata. She wrapped her arms around his neck as he slid his around her waist. A bird chose that moment to take flight from a nearby tree, scattering cherry blossoms into the slight breeze. Neither Naruto nor Hinata noticed the pink snowstorm as their lips locked. Hinata walked with Neji back to the relatively untouched Hyuga compound, a small smile creasing the corner of her mouth. Heishi was waiting for them in the courtyard when they came in through the main door. As Hanabi looked out from behind Heishi, Hinata and Neji came to a halt in front of the Hyuga elder. Hinata, Hanabi tells me she saw you and that fox together. She also said you and he have become close. Hanabi was unaware that her sister was capable of murder when Hinata gave her a deadly glare. Hiyashi's frown deepened as he took note of Hinata's expression. Heishi demanded, "Do you even know what he is?" "He is Naruto Uzumaki, vessel of the Kyuubi.no, Kitsune and nothing more." Hinata's assured words made Heishi flush. She didn't sound like herself at all. "He is the monster that tried to destroy Konoha. He may have the fox's spirit trapped in his body, but he is his own person," Hinata said with a cold growl. "That boy may look like a human, but underneath he is nothing but a demon. And your Byakugan is special, letting you see these things. Hinata, you are heiress to the Hyuga family. The future of the family rests on your shoulders and you think that monster is worthy of your affections." "I will choose whoever I want to love," Hinata said, folding her arms. "Hinata Hyuga, I forbid you to go anywhere near that fox until you see sense, until your infatuation with that monster is gone." Hinata screamed at her father, "Then the main branch of the Hyuga ends with me," and hurried to her room. Although Hiyashi's face was expressionless, he was shocked that Hinata had actually screamed at him. Hinata's delusion of strength was dashed when she slammed the door to her room shut. She fell to her knees, trembling a little. Hinata was shocked that she had just screamed at her dad. After Naruto, Sasuke launched himself. He and Neji had been ordered to accompany the fox vessel. Naruto bounded with Neji at his side. "Naruto, I feel you ought to know that Heishi-sama has forbidden Hinata to see you." Naruto nearly lost his balance. "Why?" Naruto stumbled forward and asked. "He sees you only as the Nine Tails." Murmuring, "Like hell I'm going to keep away from her," Naruto said. The clearing they had made during the previous battle was where the team landed. Neji used his Byakugan to look around, but he couldn't find anything. Sasuke and Neji were about to abandon Naruto to his exploration when they heard clapping and froze. 4 figures were standing a short distance behind them when they turned together. Desperate to discover why that group was in front of them, Sasuke's Sharingan and Neji's Byakugan activated together, but they were unable to locate any illusions, including Genjutsu. In front of them stood the Sound 4. "You're dead," snarled Naruto. Sakin corrected the blonde. "We were dead," meaning past tense. "That was a threat," boasted the sly fox. Sasuke scowled at the group and asked, "Why did he resurrect you? More importantly, how did Orochimaru resurrect you?" Neji asked, "Reanimation? You see, Lord Orochimaru was rather fond of us, and when you killed us that really pissed him off," Tayuya began. "Watch that foul mouth," Jirobo put out a grunt. Tayuya responded, "Shut up fat ass," before turning back to the Konoha trio and going on. "So he cloned our bodies, then brought our souls back with the reanimation jutsu. He used our cloned bodies as the sacrifices for the summoning. The result was us, fully revived and alive." Kimimaro went on, "But you're forgetting Lord Orochimaru's gifts." "Yes. Lord Orochimaru has granted us greater strength in order to defeat Konoha," Yukon told the Leaf Trio. Naruto had been discreetly readying himself for a pounce and chose that moment to lunge. The 4th sound disappeared, dispersing in opposing directions. The words, "We shall battle another time," came out of nowhere. Sasuke joined Naruto, who swore, "Looks like your instincts were right on the money." "We that's just peachy," Tsunade exclaimed. There wasn't much room for Naruto to duck, but he was prepared in case she threw something. The tent Tsunade was using as a temporary headquarters was crammed with him, Neji, Sakura, Shizune, Kakashi, Jiraiya, and Shikamaru. While Tsunade had been announcing their patrol routes, Naruto had stormed in, disregarding Neji's warnings. Sakura remarked, "Well, at least we know what we're up against." "Not quite," Neji responded. "They mentioned that Orochimaru had enhanced their abilities." The canvas ceiling was asked by Tsunade, "Could this day get any worse?" Anbu captain rushed into the tent and exclaimed, "Lady Tsunade, we've lost contact with Anbu Group 5. Muttering, "I had to ask," Tsunade said. Sakura exclaimed, "That's the squad Hinata was attached to." Sakura, Shikamaru, Kakashi. "Sensei, on my tail," Naruto exclaimed as he darted from the tent onto the ground. Bounding from tree to tree, Hinata guided the Anbu team through the forest. She paused for a moment, activating her Byakugan because she thought she saw something in the leaves ahead. Nothing was in front of her, but she spun around when she heard cries behind her. What appeared to be spider's silk was used to tie 3 of the 6 Anbu to the tree trunks. A gold arrow suddenly materialized and pierced the chest of the closest Anbu, who screamed. More webs splashed across his mouth and nose, drowning out another Anbu's screams. As threads swept through the trees, lassoing one of the 2 surviving Anbu around the neck and drawing him upward into the canopy, Hinata realized he was suffocating but was powerless to stop it. When two sickle-shaped blades exploded out of the leaf cover and lodged themselves in the last Anbu tethered to the tree, they killed him. Kimimaro appeared behind her and slit her throat with a blade made of his gold armor, leaving the last Anbu unsure of what had hit her. With a blade in each of his 6 hands, Kimimaro charged at Hinata, causing the Anbu to drop to the forest floor below. Kimimaro retreated as Hinata assumed the stance of the gentle fist. The spider ninja lunged at her, but he slashed at her after parrying her with one of his blades. Although Hinata escaped the first blade, the second sliced her arm, and the third struck her leg. Kimimaro moved toward Hinata after she kicked him away. Hinata allowed him to approach before turning on her left foot to form the rotating dome shield of palms. Kimimaro was launched into the air, but he bounced back fast. Knowing that this foe was too powerful for her to defeat on her own, Hinata turned and fled, the spider ninja following closely behind. A web rope pulled Hinata's feet from under her as she began to back away from Kimimaro. As Hinata fell through the branches, she eventually hit the ground. For a moment, she was stunned and could only lie on her back, but she could feel Kimimaro holding her down. Kimimaro had more arms and was stronger than Hinata, who attempted to push the spider ninja away. "I think I'll have some fun with you before I kill you," he said. Kimimaro tore off Hinata's jacket, causing her to scream. With a shout, "Get your hands off her!" Naruto appeared a few feet away and charged. Naruto's kick, powered by chakra, struck Kimimaro before he could move. The spider ninja flew across the clearing and crashed into what appeared to be a sturdy tree, but it smashed straight through it. As Sakura, Kakashi, and Shikamaru emerged behind him, Naruto turned to face Hinata. Naruto knelt beside Hinata and said, "Hinata, are you alright?" in a quiet voice. She grabbed the front of his jacket and nodded. Reluctantly, Naruto forced her to release her grip and covered her with his jacket. Naruto turned to face Kakashi. The white-haired ninja nearly recoiled at the hateful expression on his face, and Sakura couldn't help but squeak in terror. With an animal note in his voice, Naruto snarled, "Kakashi Sensei, take Hinata back to Konoha and have Granny Tsunade take care of her. I'll join you when I can." When Naruto got back up and looked in the direction Kimimaro had been, he was gone. After taking Hinata, Kakashi disappeared. Sakura and Shikamaru knew he wouldn't require assistance, so they retreated from the furious fox vessel. Kimimaro watched from his perch atop the tree, his enhanced vision enabling him to take in every aspect of the scene below. His eyes locked with Naruto's and he froze in terror. The spider ninja thought he was staring into the nine-tailed fox's eyes instead of someone else's. Kimimaro aligned his bow's arrow with Naruto's chest while shaking himself. After a brief pause, he let go of the arrow. The arrow was avoided by Naruto. Shortly before he reached Kimimaro, he charged and disappeared. Kimimaro sensed that he was being lifted off his feet and flung to the ground. After landing safely, he turned to face Sakura and Shikamaru. "Why don't they assist?" "What?" the spider ninja asked. As Naruto's fist struck one of his left elbows, shattering the gold armor and underlying bone, Kimimaro screamed. As he battered the spider ninja, Naruto only dimly understood what he was doing. Naruto placed his foot on another elbow, this time on the opposite side, and dodged Kimaru's other arms. He brought his feet down hard on Kimaru's shoulders and kicked upward. Given all the good it was doing, the Spider Ninja's gold armor might as well have been tissue paper. The Spider Ninja's second.to last elbow joint was where Naruto buried a kunai after landing and taking it out of his pouch. He appeared on the opposite side of Kimaru after disappearing in the sand. After snatching Kimaru's final working arm and pushing it in the wrong direction, Naruto jumped off. Kimaru's anger subsided enough for him to display all 6 of his arms hanging limp at his sides. In his hand, Naruto discovered the arrow intended for him. With haste, he thrust it into Kimaru's abdomen. After retreating, Naruto called forth 4 clones, who then rushed forward. Kimaru was launched skyward because he was unable to react quickly enough. When he saw the real Naruto approaching from above, his eyes widened. With a roar, Naruto slammed the chakra ball into Kimaru's chest while forming a Sunari Rasengan in his right hand. The two fell back to the ground. They were hidden from view as a dome sandstorm rose and the ground beneath Kimaru shattered as they struck. When the wind and dust had subsided, Shikamaru saw Naruto appear, his eyes almost glimmering. When he got to Sakura and Shikamaru, they turned back to blue. Sakura regretted looking at Kimaru's body because she wasn't even certain that what was left could be referred to as a body. They jumped into the trees and made their way back to Konoha without saying anything. Shikamaru and Sakura followed Naruto into the village. He went to Kakashi after spotting him. Kakashi knew what the blonde was thinking and pointed to a smaller medical tent without even asking. Shizune stood outside the tent as Naruto swept towards it. Although he was closer, he could see Heishi, Hanabi, and Neji heading straight for the tent. As he got to the tent, Tsunade stepped out. Tsunade said, "She's shaken and she has a couple of scratches but there's no lasting damage," before moving aside to make room for him. As Heishi caught up with Naruto, he ran inside. Shizune and Tsunade stood in his way. "How dare you let that fox anywhere near my daughter? I'll let it go that you mentioned the demon this time, but that fox saved your daughter," Tsunade yelled. "I don't even want to think about what would have happened if he hadn't been there." Heishi stumbled. "That still doesn't change what he is. He is Naruto Uzumaki. A person with the same feelings, fears and ambitions as the rest of us." Heishi controlled his rage. Desperate to send Heishi flying across the village, Tsunade gave him time to gather his thoughts. Keeping his composure, Heishi pushed past Shizune and Tsunade and entered the tent. Naruto was seated beside Hinata, who was seated on one of the folding cots. Hinata, who was still wearing Naruto's jacket, was holding onto his shirt while he had his arms wrapped around her. Hinata had buried her face in his shoulder, her hair covering her face. When Naruto saw Heishi come in, he gave a fox-like growl. The only sound to break the tense silence was Hinata's occasional quiet sobbing. Heishi swept out of the tent and said, "Boy, once my daughter has calmed down, I want to talk to you at the Hyuga compound." In front of Heishi, Naruto knelt on the ground. Because there was no furniture in the Hyuga mansion, Naruto assumed the room was used for training. Naruto was certain that Heishi wasn't blinking because Heishi had knelt down and fixed his gaze on him. Heishi said, "I want to start by saying thank you for saving Hinata." Naruto gazed. "You heard me correctly." Naruto believed Heishi could read his thoughts. "Now tell me, what is Hinata to you?" Naruto was taken aback by the question, and his thoughts froze. Heishi inquired, "What would you do to protect her?" Naruto uttered the words as they suddenly came to him. "I would defend her with my life." Heishi got up to go, but he stopped at the door. "You have proved yourself capable of keeping your word, so I will allow your relationship with my daughter to continue," he stopped and said, "for the time being." Heishi didn't say anything more before leaving. Unsteadily, Naruto got to his feet and made it to the door. He was nearly knocked off his feet after leaving the room in 2 steps. Hinata encircled him with her arms and clung to him as firmly as she could. Naruto gave her a hug in return. After a while, Hinata let go of Naruto and they set out to find a peaceful location. In front of Tsunade and Shizune in the headquarters tent were the Konoha 12, their senseis, and the Sand Trio. The Sound 4's reappearance has thrown an unexpected wrench into our works. Each member on their own is a force to be reckoned with. We must remove them before they can cause more damage. Naruto has already taken care of Kimimaro. That only leaves Tayuya, Jirobo and Sakin and Yukon to be dealt with. Lady Tsunade. "If I may," Lee said, holding up his hand. Tsunade gave Lee a nod of approval before she spoke. There was another member of the Sound 4. The one with the ability to manipulate his bones, Kimimaro. Guy said, "Well noted, my youthful student," with pride. "Yes, well noted." Tsunade nodded. "Since there are ninja here who have fought the Sound 4 before, they will be charged with assembling teams to take out the enemy have fought previously. You may choose anyone who is best suited to deal with their selected enemy's skills." Kiba shuddered, Choji swallowed, and Shikamaru moaned. "As we don't know if Kimimaro has been revived, Lee will also assemble a team." Tsunade went on, "Shikamaru, Kiba, Choji, Lee. I will expect a report as to your choice of team mates before you are deployed. Remember that the Sound 4 said they have been enhanced by Orochimaru, so be on your guard." Dismissed. After leaving the tent, the shinobi and kunoichi scattered and returned to their different tasks. As he and Lee left, Guy yelled, "Your first command, my youthful student. This is a momentous day." Lee shouted back, "Guy, Sensei, I won't let you down." As he and Sasuke searched for food, Naruto moaned. Sasuke whispered, "I hope I'm not on his team," as they arrived at the mess tent. "Same here," concurred Naruto. Sasuke and Naruto found a hidden place to eat after getting their food. Around a mouthful of food, Naruto said, "Hey Sasuke, what actually happened in the Valley of the End during our second fight?" Sasuke said, "You don't remember?" and stopped eating. I don't know what happened because the fox took control, said Naruto, shaking his head. The simple version is you went 3 tails and beat the hell out of me. Naruto's guilt prevented him from eating, and they fell silent once more. Sasuke took note of his face. He smiled slightly at Naruto and said, in hindsight, I think I needed some sense beaten into me. Naruto's expression brightened a little, and he resumed eating. As he finished his scant rations, Sasuke gazed up into the pale sky. Once I'd healed, Tsunade tossed me in a cell and threatened me with punishments beyond imagination. Sasuke went on, many involving letting the villagers loose on me. As you can understand, after my desertion I wasn't best popular. But she eventually decided just to let the Konoha 12 minus you at me. Sasuke trembled. I've never known Sakura to yell so loud, but Lee was by far the worst. If I heard youth on more time I would have screamed. When he heard someone approaching them, Sasuke halted his conversation and turned back to face the ground. Shikamaru stood in front of them. He informed Sasuke and Naruto, I've begun to assemble my team, and you're with me, Sasuke. Shikamaru turned to Naruto as Sasuke nodded in response. Just a friendly warning, Lee is thinking about putting you on his team. Well, at least you escaped, Sasuke, Naruto moaned. Heishi closed the door after entering the Hyuga compound's council room. As he sat in front of the council, he noticed that they had already gathered. Heishi, said the elderly head of the council with a wheeze, we have discovered that your oldest child is involved in a relationship that you did not choose. That is true, added Heishi. The woman beside the elderly Hyuga questioned, we have also heard that the relationship is with the 9 tails. Is that also true? Yes, it is. Another council member demanded, how could you allow the Hyuga name to be connected with that monster? Hinata's actions are beyond my control. She has threatened that if she is not allowed to peruse her relationship, then the Hyuga main branch ends with her. The woman on the council said, but you have another daughter, she could carry on the bloodline. And break with almost 300 years of tradition, said the oldest, only the eldest may carry on the family line. What about the branch child? Neji, the final participant, inquired. The old man shouted, are you determined to undermine the traditions of this house? As the council argued on, Heishi said nothing. The leader turned to Heishi and said, enough, before silencing the other council members. What is the status of the connection between your daughter and the demon? Heishi curtly replied, they are close, and he has said that he will give his life to protect Hinata. We cannot allow the relationship to continue. We will not allow an outsider, let alone that monster, into the main branch. And if the pairing produces any offspring are born, we have no idea what effect the demon will have on them. The last thing we want is demons with the Byakugan, the woman on the council said. I believe there is only one course of action open to us, the leader of the council stated with a gloomy tone. We must bind her Byakugan and sever all ties with her. Then Hanabi will be your only daughter and rightful heir to the main branch. Even though Hinata was his daughter, Heishi was shocked to learn that she was in love with a monster, but he was helpless to stop the Hyuga council. The council leader said, you may leave Heishi, causing Heishi to awaken from his reverie. Heishi rose, bowed, and walked out of the council chambers. Unaware that Hinata was concealed in a nearby alcove, he continued down the hallway. She had listened to everything. Tsunade recorded Kiba's team report. He had squandered time deciding who to pick. Tenten, Ino, and Konkuro. It was a strange combination, she had to admit, but it made sense. As Choji entered the tent, her thoughts were disrupted. I have my team ready, he said, passing a piece of paper to her. Tsunade said, good, after reading the report. You've got an odd combination as well, she said, raising an eyebrow. As she emerged in the doorway, Shizune exclaimed, Lady Tsunade. Shikamaru's team is already on their way. Tayuya has been sighted. Good. Have medical ninja on standby for their return. The red-headed member of the Sound 4 was waiting for Shikamaru when he landed in a clearing at that precise moment, followed by Neji and Tamari. I've been wanting a rematch with you, she snarled at Shikamaru instead. The Sand Kunoichi and Leaf Shinobi spread out, adopting their traditional attack positions. Neji assumed the soft fist position as Tamari waved her fan. Tayuya placed her hand on the ground, and her summons to the demon materialized in a cloud of smoke. As the smoke cleared, Shikamaru examined the demons. There are still 3 of them. Each still has the same appearance as before, but they might have additional hidden skills. As the demons moved forward and the pattern of her curse mark expanded, Tayuya lifted her flute to her lips. Tamari swung her fan after glancing at the closest demon. The beast screamed as the wind pounded it. When the wind died, it still howled, The demon lunged at her, and Temari threw himself backwards. Neji unleashed a blast of chakra on the demon looming over him. The creature lifted both hands above its head and shrugged off the chakra. Neji ducked under the huge fists and took a step back. He insisted, "What are these things?" "These are the demons that she controls with her flute," said Shikamaru. "Don't let them get too close." Tayuya shouted, "You don't need to get close anymore," and her tone changed. A novel combination. Shikamaru came to the realization that, be ready for anything. As the new song filled the air, the demons bounded to the edges of the clearing, causing the air to ripple around them. "Pyramidal wall of darkness," Tayuya exclaimed, pausing for breath. The Konoha team was surrounded by a barrier of shadows that dispersed among the demons. The wall closed off the sun by spreading upward in the shape of a pyramid. Something slammed into Shikamaru, knocking him off his feet and taking him by surprise. Hands formed of the shadows grasped Temari's fan and attempted to remove it, but she resisted. "Is this genjutsu?" inquired Temari. Neji answered, "No, this is real as far as I can tell." Tayuya emerged from the shadows. The redhead remarked, "Inside this pyramid, the shadows obey my every whim," before the darkness once more concealed her. "Can you learn to see in the dark?" she asked. "Neji, can you see her?" "There's a void in the darkness where she is, but she keeps moving," Neji said, ducking as a shadow sprang at him. "Barely, I'm having to rely on what I can't see to find her." Neji sensed that the shadow was attempting to overtake him. He turned, but the shadow's hands caught him and restrained him. He grinned. "There's a finite amount of material in here," Neji stated to Tayuya, "and to attack you must use the shadows hiding you. Shikamaru, she's 30 feet dead ahead." "Sasuke now!" shouted Shikamaru. Tayuya had to duck out of the way as a flurry of fireballs burst from beneath her. Tayuya crashed into the center of the clearing as Sasuke emerged from the shadows and slammed his fist into her stomach. Tayuya blasted, "Nice try, morons, but you wasted your energy," as she stood up. Sasuke questioned in a fictitious bewilderment, "Did I?" After realizing that her demons in the pyramid barrier were gone, Tayuya frantically searched the area and discovered Shikamaru kneeling in front of an unfolded scroll. "Since you came back, I decided your demons would be the perfect test subjects for this new sealing jutsu. The only problem is I haven't figured out how to unseal anything yet." When Tayuya screamed, horns grew on her head and her skin turned gray. Once more, she lifted her flute and released a single, long note that caused the ninjas' heads and ears to ache. Desperate to block out the sound, Shikamaru covered his ears. Tayuya twisted and disappeared as Sasuke lunged at her, feet first. He ducked back toward the other players. Shikamaru remarked, "Clever, using that note to hide your attack." Temari shouted, "Stop admiring the enemy." Temari was encircled by trees that grew around her, one branch around her neck, when the ground beneath Shikamaru collapsed and he fell into an endless tunnel. Before Neji realized what was happening, he was knee deep in marsh as Sasuke was ensnared by thorny vines that were digging into his skin. As the vines grew tighter and pulled Sasuke's arms in an unexpected direction, he screamed. He saw the hazy outline of Tayuya as his Sharingan broke through the illusion. Through the haze of the illusion, Sasuke glared at Tayuya. As Sasuke struggled against the vines that bound him, she gazed. The Uchiha struggled more vigorously against the vine's hold after he was able to plant his feet. Tayuya's form hurried toward him, most likely brandishing a kunai. Sasuke quickly slashed out with his knee, slamming his foot into Tayuya's jaw before she could cut his throat. Sasuke stood, unaware of the thorns, and she stumbled backwards. The illusion vanished when Sasuke called out to her, "You call this genjutsu?" Temari, Neji, and Shikamaru stood up unsteadily. With his kunai raised, Tayuya snarled and lunged at Sasuke. Sasuke snarled, "Your last mistake," blinked, and his Sharingan transformed back into its Mangekyu form. The colors of Tayuya's world turned upside down, and she discovered she was immobile. Before her, Sasuke materialized. He moved slowly forward, and 3 more figures emerged behind him. They were Tayuya's own summons, and she recognized them. Sasuke halted, and the demons all moved past him to encircle Tayuya. Sasuke grinned and said, "You're at their mercy for the next 3 days." As the demons attacked, Tayuya could only scream. Tayuya choked in the real world, her eyes dulling, and she fell to the ground. Her form came to rest at Sasuke's feet, but her momentum continued to propel her forward. "One down," mumbled Sasuke. Neji said, "Probably 3 to go," in closing. Naruto ducked through the medical tent's doorway and peered around. He crossed the tent to Hinata when he saw her. Medical ninjas were caring for the most recent casualties as they lay stretched out on folding cots. After searching the tent, Naruto located an empty bed and took a seat on it. After healing the casualty, Hinata turned to face Naruto on the next bed and jumped when she saw him. "Naruto, why are you here?" Gasping for air, Naruto clutched his heart before collapsing back into the cot. "I need the kiss of life, or better still just a kiss," he laughed. Hinata reprimanded, "Naruto, this is no time to be messing around." Hinata's normally pale eyes were red, as Naruto's keen eyes noticed. "Hinata? Something wrong?" he said, getting to his feet. She shook her head while rushing about the tent to appear occupied. Taking hold of her wrist, Naruto gently but firmly drew her away from the other medical ninja. "What's wrong?" Naruto insisted. "Nothing," Hinata said, attempting to distance herself. "Hinata, something is bothering you. You're not doing yourself any favors by denying it." Hinata tried to sound normal when she said, "I'm fine, Naruto," but Naruto didn't believe her. Hinata was taken aback when the blonde grabbed her and held her against him. "I'm not letting go until you tell me what's bugging you." Hinata buried her face in Naruto's shoulder as she felt her eye welling up with tears once more. Holding Hinata's trembling body while she sobbed, Naruto waited patiently. Hinata finally stopped crying and turned to face Naruto. Naruto released his hold on her and used his thumb to wipe the final tear from Hinata's cheek. "Now, what's the matter?" Hinata's speech was nearly unintelligible. "The Hyuga Council called a meeting with my father. Somehow they found out about us," Hinata said with tears in her eyes. "They're saying that if we stay together, they'll bind my Byakugan and disown me." Hinata was expecting Naruto to lash out, but he remained silent, and she gasped as she looked up into his face. Sakura decided to look up from her patient at that precise moment, and Naruto was there. Naruto's emotions were evident even from the opposite side of the tent. Sakura thought he was going to lose it because of the rage in his eyes and the snarl that formed on his lips. She was about to approach the two when Naruto regained his composure and turned back to Hinata. "How can they do that to you? It's tradition. If a female member of the main branch marries outside the family, they seal her Byakugan. And your father is just going to let them disown you? He only sees you as the fox and Hanabi's always been his favorite. If I didn't think it'd hurt you, I'd go and beat some sense into the Hyuga Council and your father." Hinata whispered, "That wouldn't do any good," and buried her face once more in Naruto's shoulder. "Hinata, what if you and I just disappeared? If they can't find you, they can't seal your Byakugan," Naruto thought. Hinata raised her head once more. "But if I leave, I'll be a missing nin, and where would we go? If we talk to Granny Tsunade, she'll understand. We just vanish, here one day then gone before anyone knows what happened. Where would we go? Suna, Gaara, Temari and Kankuro are practically family. They won't turn you away. I doubt the council will let me hang around after Orochimaru's gone anyway." Naruto grabbed Hinata by the wrist and pulled her out of the tent before she could reconsider his plan. The sounds of battle broke the bird calls of dawn. Kiba's group was fighting their targets in a rocky area near the forest's edge. Kiba yelled, "Fang over Fang," as he and Akamaru hurried towards Saken and Yukon. Saken made a number of hand signals and threw himself out of the way. He whispered, "Parasitic touch," and hurried over to Kiba as he ceased spinning. As Saken approached Kiba, red chakra smeared across his hands. The pale-haired man attempted to land a blow, but Kiba ducked backwards. Kiba's arm was scraped by Saken's fingers. Using Saken as a springboard, Kiba screamed in agony and slammed his foot into his face. Saken was flung backwards, and he landed beside Kankuro. Kiba looked horrified as he lifted his jacked sleeve to inspect the wound. Despite the small cut, a black mark was already appearing on his skin. Kiba's arm threw a punch at Kankuro as his muscles twitched. The arm of Karasu deflected the blow. Kankuro screamed, "What are you doing?" as he struck Kiba once more. Kiba clutched his possessed hand and exclaimed, "It's not me. They must be controlling me." When a hail of kunai forced Saken to dive for cover, he was able to stand up, the pattern of his curse mark spreading. Several of the blades sliced into his arm, and he swore. As Kiba restrained his arm, Ino joined him and began working to cure the infection. Ino was struck in the stomach by Kiba's slashing arm. As Ino stood up and began to fight the infection once more, Kiba seized his wrist once more. "Sorry," Kiba offered a grunt. As Yukon emerged from her left, initially raised to attack, Tenten prepared another barrage of weapons to cover Ino and Kiba. After avoiding the blow, she drove a blade into his shoulder and moved away. As if reaching inside his clothing, Ukin growled, "You think you're the only one with projectiles." Where the curse mark had turned his forearms black, the skin rippled and then became sharp and spine-like. The spines flew at Tenten as Ukin screamed, "Viral darts!" and flicked his arms. Tenten dodged the spikes, but they burst into a red mist as they struck the ground behind her. As the mist swirled around her, she covered her mouth and coughed. Tenten's knees buckled and she fell into the mist. "That mist is made of particles of my own blood. Even when separated from me, I can still control those cells. Every time you breathe in, more of my cells get into your body and rip it apart from the inside," Yukon sneered. As Yukon moved in for the kill, Kankuro saw Tenten fall and swung Kuroari around to grab her with the puppet. When Yukon attempted to pursue Tenten, Karasu stepped in front of him and stabbed him in the chest. As he entered level 2, the marks on his body grew darker and more extensive. As Ino turned to Saken's hiding place, Kiba tightened a ripped piece of material around his arm. When Akamaru whimpered, Kiba turned to see Yukon's shape shifting. As Yukon seized the puppet and withdrew the blade from his chest, Kankuro drew Karasu back. After the blade wound healed, Yukon launched another round of darts, this time aimed at Kiba. Grabbing Ino, he launched himself away, avoiding the red mist and the needle-like darts. From her pouch, Ino took an explosive tag and kunai, which she then threw at Yukon. When Yukon saw the tag, his eyes widened, but he was unable to react quickly enough before the blade lodged itself in his arm. Rock fragments flew in all directions after the blast. As the smoke cleared and Yukon reappeared, the team regrouped. As he assumed his four-legged stance, Kiba yelled, "This is when they're at their most dangerous. Stay sharp," to his teammates. In front of them, Yukon's burns and other injuries from the explosion healed. Saken hurried out of his hiding spot, red chakra once more covering his hands, as Yukon cracked his neck. Saken's attack was stopped by Karasu, Kuroari, and Sanshuo, and he withdrew once more. Kiba started to pursue Saken, but Yukon turned black. Yukon roared, "Black death mist," and spit out what appeared to be black smoke. When Kiba's team noticed the plants beneath the cloud dying, they all retreated together. Saken came out of hiding once more and joined his brother on the rocky hill. "Ino," Kiba gestured softly. With a nod, the blonde prepared the clan only method. "Breathing, mind destruction jutsu," Ino said. When the jutsu took effect and Yukon stopped spitting out toxic smoke, his eyes went glassy. The words, "Brother, why?" were interrupted when Yukon's hands suddenly reached out and encircled Saken's neck. Yukon's strength from the curse mark knocked Saken to his knees. He moved his own curse mark to the same level in retaliation. Ino implemented the second part of their plan because they were prepared for the change. Yukon let go and slammed into his brother, becoming one with him. As Ukin was compelled to release his toxins into his twin, Saken choked. Tenten fought her way to her feet and aimed. Saken watched Tenten, his face turning white and blood dripping from his mouth. Kankuro sent Karasu after her as she launched herself high into the air. In a few seconds, Tenten and the puppet unloaded everything they owned into the twins. With blades and other weapons protruding at every angle, Saken and Ukin went to their knees before falling to the bottom of the rocky mound. The final words Yukon uttered were, "Forgive me, brother," before he lay motionless. As Tenten fell back to earth, her vision became blurry and her endurance failed. She was caught by Kiba before she hit the ground. Kankuro walked over to the twins' body and quickly looked for vital signs, but there were none. "Mission complete," Kiba said to Kankuro upon his return. With a nod, Kiba and the rest of his team bounded off in the direction of the Leaf Village. The team arrived at the Konoha gates to find Tsunade and a medical team waiting for them. After giving the medics a quick explanation, Kiba handed Tenten to them, and they hurried to the medical tent. "Targets eliminated," Kiba said, turning to face Tsunade without giving her a glance. "You did well," she informed him. "Tenten will be fine," was then added. After entering the village, the team moved through the tents until they came across and joined the other ninja. Because he couldn't stop thinking about Tenten, Kiba sat apart from the others. "She'll be fine," a voice that was familiar added. Kiba jumped. He had been so absorbed in his thoughts that he had failed to notice Shikamaru seated beside him. "Remember the first time I led a team?" Muttered. "Yeah, I was on it," Kiba said. "Well, almost every member of my team ended up in the hospital, you included. I felt like I'd failed as a leader. But you only had one casualty and Tenten wasn't badly hurt. You did a good job." Neji and Lee sat across from Shikamaru, and Shikamaru ceased talking. "Kiba, Tenten is stronger than you think," Neji blunted. "She will not give up without a fight. But right now, You are the greater casualty. We can't afford to lose morale now, Lee said to Kiba. A member of Anbu emerged and approached Choji. Assemble your team. Jirobo has been sighted. Choji called, Lee, Sakura, with me. Gaara and Temari were engaged in a pointless conversation when Naruto and Hinata emerged from behind him. The anxious looking pair came closer, and the former Tanuki raised a non-existent eyebrow. When Naruto arrived, he said, Gaara, would you allow a fugitive from Konoha to take refuge in Suna? Gaara said, not normally. Why? Hinata's father and the Hyuga Council are planning to bind her Byakugan and throw her out if she is with me. Even with a dujutsu, some people refuse to see what's right in front of them, Gaara murmured. Say the word, Hinata was told by Temari, and I'll blow them away. They'll be halfway to Suna before he knows what's happening. The idea of her father and the council flying over Konoha made Hinata smile weakly. If Hinata is the fugitive you are talking about, then I have no objections. Naruto smiled at Hinata and said, see, told you, adding that all we need to do now is speak with Granny Tsunade. Gaara said, I'll come too, and got up. They made their way to Tsunade's tent after Naruto led the way through the others. When Shizune emerged from the tent, he saw the somber-looking group. She simply held the tent flap open for them because she knew better than to try to stop them. After concluding her debriefing of the Anbu squad, Tsunade focused on Naruto. I knew you'd come to bother me today, she said with a smile. You won't be smiling after I tell you why we're here, said Naruto. Tsunade's expression darkened as Naruto and Hinata told her the tale. The moment Naruto uttered the word, disowned, she blew up. Tsunade yelled, he what? I swear, if he wasn't a noble I would. As Hinata sought cover behind Naruto, she glared at no one in particular and gave a menacing crack of her knuckles. Tsunade shouted to the sky, I do not believe how stubborn the Hyuga family can be, no offense, she added, glancing at Hinata. So what do we do? Tsunade told them, leave it to me, we'll figure it out. Naruto suggested that he and Hinata leave. Hinata's Byakugan can't be sealed if she can't be found. And I'm willing to offer her sanctuary in Suna, Gaara stated to Tsunade. We'll keep that as a last resort. Before we do anything, I want a word with Heishi. At the Konoha gates, Choji, Sakura, and Lee hurried past the Anbu and dove into the trees. Choji remarked, I appreciate you coming along, Lee, as Lee joined him and Sakura. It is no problem. From what you have told me of this Jirobo, we need all the power we can muster. Sakura sighed, I just hope Kimimaro doesn't decide to appear now. Remember, we don't know if he has even been resurrected, Lee said. When the three ninja noticed a big figure leaping through the trees in front of them, they all fell silent. That's him, Choji snarled, stay away until we get a good look. They kept a safe distance behind Jirobo until he came out of the trees and entered one of the former battle sites. There was little cover because the vast area had been ripped apart by the intense fighting. To stop his group at the edge of the tree cover, Choji raised his hand. Jirobo surveyed the battlefield while Choji's group positioned themselves. Choji shouted, go, and the team shot out of the canopy. The leaf ninja materialized, and Jirobo turned. Choji called out, hey fat ass. Remember me. Before Jirobo could respond, Choji slammed his enormous fists into him. The leaf team landed in front of the sound ninja, who swore as he was freed from beneath Choji's fists. Lee knelt down and unfastened the weights at his ankles. With weights in his hands, he stood up once more. He called, catch, and tossed his weights. They sent Jirobo skidding backwards after catching him in the stomach. When Jirobo steadied himself, he turned to face the leaf ninja and saw that they had vanished. Lee hit the back of his head with his feet. Lee was gone when he turned to slam his fist into him. Lee reappeared and punched Jirobo in the abdomen. Until Jirobo was able to seize his arm and force him to the ground, the pattern persisted. He stepped on Lee's neck and wiped a trickle of blood from the side of his head before asking, any last words? The ground beneath him flew into the air, and Jirobo lifted his leg to slam it back down on Lee. Sakura picked up a rock fragment and threw it at Jirobo. Righting himself in midair, Jirobo caught the rock before it struck him, sending it flying back to Sakura. She used a chakra-enhanced punch to shatter it. Jirobo's curse mark spread across his body as he landed with a huge crash. As he stood up again, the sound ninja growled. Earth style, rock tsunami. Jirobo screamed, hitting the ground with both fists. A huge landslide formed when the ground heaved, rushing in the direction of Sakura, Choji, and Lee. As Sakura drove her hands into the ground, a wall of earth rose up, and Choji was the first to duck behind it, followed by Lee and Sakura. Sakura's wall was struck by the earth wall as it roared in the direction of the team. On either side of the wall, the earth surged past, but the team held on. When the dust settled, Sakura got to her feet and frantically searched for Jirobo. He surprised her by coming up and grabbing her by the neck. The sound ninja lifted her off the ground and then tightened his hold, forcing Sakura to release her breath. Lee tried to kick Jirobo, but Jirobo's free hand batted it away. When Choji realized Sakura was in the way, he halted his attempt to use a human boulder to ram Jirobo. Jirobo kicked Choji away, taking advantage of his predicament. "Hey Fatso." Jirobo looked back and saw Tsunade standing there. Tsunade rushed at him and yelled, "Take your hands off my student." Jirobo responded by hurling Sakura across the clearing and yelling, "If you want her so bad, then take her." Sakura was easily caught by Tsunade, who jumped after her and landed next to Lee and Choji. Setting Sakura aside, she moved closer to Jirobo once more. Jirobo squatted and cried out, "Earth barricade." The earth rose to protect him. Tsunade targeted the rock barrier and delivered a precise blow that broke it. Tsunade slammed her foot into Jirobo without missing a beat. The sound ninja broke into the ground. The woman whispered, "An earth clone." Jirobo appeared beside Tsunade, and she turned to face him. They both attempted to strike, but their fists collided. As the meeting fists sent a shockwave in their direction, Sakura, Choji, and Lee sprang for cover. Both ninja were standing at opposite ends of the battlefield when they peered out. At the same moment, Jirobo and Tsunade hurried forward. Jirobo sidestepped and put his hands flat on the ground at the last second. Encircling rampart. Tsunade was surrounded by a solid wall of rock as the ground Jirobo was standing on rose, creating a sheer cliff face. Tsunade ran up to the cliff and proceeded to climb it. Rock barrage. The cliff's edges began to give way and tumble in Tsunade's direction. In response, she pounded her fists into any rocks that were in close proximity to her. Jirobo was knocked off balance when one rock slammed back at him, striking him in the face. He made a full recovery in time to be sent flying by Tsunade's chakra. Fueled punch. As he fell to the base of his cliff, Tsunade landed beside him with grace. Jirobo snarled at Tsunade, his hair growing and his body covered in a curse mark. From his failed landslide, he picked up a rock and threw it at Sakura, Choji, and Lee. Hurrying forward, Tsunade broke the missile. Final resting place, Imperial Mausoleum. A deep hollow was created when the earth moved beneath the team and then fell away from them. Jirobo heaved and grasped the ground before him. He lifted a huge weight of earth over his head as the ground gave way. He crossed the hollow and was ready to bury the leaf ninja by slamming the earth down when he was knocked backward by something concealed in a burst of smoke. Summoning Jutsu. As the smoke cleared, the enormous slug and Tsunade standing atop it were visible. Jirobo got to his feet, his rage exploding. He ran in the direction of the slug and gabbed Katsuyu's front. The lurch of her summoned creature nearly knocked Tsunade off her feet. Perhaps this will help, as strength isn't working. As she launched herself into space, she pondered. Tsunade formed the signature chakra scalpel of a medical ninja by focusing chakra into her hand. Tsunade fell toward Jirobo, who glared up at him. As Tsunade cut his nerves, he lifted an arm to strike, but it fell limp to his side. Tsunade severed the nerves in Jirobo's other arm when he attempted to use it. Jirobo fell to the ground after Tsunade cut his knees, causing them to crumple. As Jirobo fought against his own body, she stood above him. When Jirobo finally got to her knees, her eyes grew wide. Jirobo snarled, "Even if I die, Lord Orochimaru will destroy you." "The Leaf Village's fire will never go out," Tsunade answered. Jirobo's chest, just above his heart, was struck by Tsunade. Jirobo fell to the ground, choking. Tsunade called out to the team, "You three alright?" They gave a nod. "Then let's go home." As though in defiance of the Sound Village's attacks, the Leaf Village's walls stood tall despite being broken and battered. As the sun shone down from above, ninja from Anbu to Chunin were strewn about and atop the walls, standing watch. Something moved in the forest, causing a Chunin to twitch, but he brushed it off as an animal. He failed to notice the shadow moving along the wall's base, leaving behind explosive markings. The Chunin saw the same movement in the forest and stood up once more. Just as he was going to draw attention to it, a blade shot out of the foliage and lodged itself in his throat. He fell to the bottom of the wall, choking. An expressionless face raised a blade with another tag wrapped around it as it watched the ninja strike the ground. The other explosives were set off when he threw the blade at the wall, causing it to explode before it even touched the stone. The attack was made possible by the wall's stone collapsing and crumbling. The sullen-faced man swung his arm forward after raising it above his head. Out of nowhere, large silhouettes appeared and rushed into Konoha. The Konoha all turned their heads in unison and turned to face the smoke plume that was rising over the remaining rooftops. A number of Anbu members shot skyward, and Sasuke cracked his knuckles. He mumbled, "Looks like we're on," and took the lead. Sakura and Naruto ran beside Sasuke as they pursued the Anbu. Naruto had to do a double take when they arrived at the scene because every soldier appeared more animal than human. The leader of the pack had claws on his fingers and arms covered in tiger-like fur. Sasuke's expression darkened as he examined the adversary. Orochimaru's test subjects, he growled before turning to the other people, "Listen up, these creatures aren't human anymore and they're completely out of control. The only thing we can do is put them out of their misery." The others joined the fight after nodding. Using his chakra blades, Naruto killed the first of the creatures. As it fell, its shape grew more human. Sasuke threw himself into the air and showered the throng of creatures with fireballs. Lee kicked another creature into the air, bringing it back down with a primary lotus, while Kiba and Akamaru blasted through the monsters, scattering them everywhere. As a creature with crab-like armor attempted to attack her, Sakura grabbed it and swung it over her shoulder and into the ground. It lay motionless as its armor broke. A wolf-headed beast spotted Neji and lunged, its ruby eyes focused on Lavender. Neji's rotation threw the beast backwards, causing it to collide with more of Orochimaru's creatures. A scorpion-tailed creature sprang up out of the ground beneath Naruto, surprising him. Gaara was leading the sand forces into the attack when he landed in a pile of sand and turned to look around. Returning to his feet, Naruto launched himself at the scorpion once more. He cut the animal's throat and chopped off its tail. The scorpion fell, and Naruto's face darkened as he saw the plethora of monsters pouring through the hole in the wall. He flickered and growled, "A sandstorm is coming," leaving a trail of shadow clones behind him. Sasuke attempted to strike an enemy with his fist, but a yellow blur sent it flying backwards. Faster than ever, Naruto formed a one-man barrier between the Konoha forces and the monstrous enemy. As the second wave approached, the Konoha and Suna ninja withdrew and got ready. Kakashi remarked, "Finally found a way to channel his hyperactivity," as he materialized beside Sasuke. The Uchiha witnessed the creatures behind the human wall gathering and Naruto's speed decrease. Kakashi tightened his jaw. "Sasuke, when the wall falls we'll cover Naruto's retreat." As Kakashi formed a lightning blade, Sasuke nodded and made a Chidori. The lightning-wielding shinobi rushed forward and carved twin paths through the enemy creatures after receiving several puffs of smoke. Sakura was beside Naruto, who was panting heavily and had flickering chakra blades. Sakura caught him before he fell as he stumbled. She said, "Naruto, you alright?" "Yeah," Naruto muttered as he made himself stand up. As he defeated another monster, Neji yelled, "Keep it up, their numbers are falling." The Konoha ninja were thundered towards by the horde of monsters that Kakashi and Sasuke had missed. Sakura commanded, "Retreat," and hurled herself out of the path of destruction, with the other ninja trailing behind. Sakura noticed Naruto was motionless when she turned around. Sakura cried out, "Naruto, get out of there." Crossing his forearms, Naruto lifted his arms above his head. "Fox Chakra." Right now, inside his head, Naruto screamed. A rush of red chakra rushed down Naruto's arms, and he used it to form his blades while simultaneously adding his wind element. Ignorant of the shinobi in their way, Orochimaru's monsters kept moving forward. Naruto swung his arms down in a great arc and sent an X-shaped shockwave racing towards the beasts with a roar that would have made Shukaku shudder. The throng of beasts was sliced by the shockwaves, which destroyed their ranks and dispersed them everywhere. Before they hit the ground, the majority were already dead. Another sizable crowd rushed toward Naruto before he could unwind. Once more, Naruto flitted, eliminating one foe after another. Sasuke's Sharingan observed Naruto slowing down from his vantage point. Additionally, Kakashi appeared to have noticed Naruto's decrease in speed. Kakashi mumbled, "He's running out of chakra." According to Sasuke, well, at least the enemies are running out. It crumpled under the force of Naruto's foot slamming into a wolf-headed creature. Naruto discovered that the enemy forces had been routed. As Sakura, Sasuke, and Kakashi landed next to Naruto, his chakra blades weakened. Kakashi observed the destruction brought about by Naruto's attacks. Kakashi grinned and said, "I think you went a little overboard." Naruto was able to smile back before his knees buckled. Sasuke took hold of Naruto, helped him stand up, and pulled him back to his feet. "Moron. That's what you get for using all your chakra playing hero," he said. All four heads looked around in unison when a chakra spike occurred. A figure emerged from the midst of the devastation as the smoke and dust cleared. Naruto shuddered at his expressionless gaze. At the end of the sound 5, Gaara and Lee emerged in front of Team 7, frowning. With a shrug, Kimimaro dropped his jacket to the floor and began to approach Gaara and Lee at a leisurely pace. Naruto nearly passed out as he struggled to stand again. "Naruto, with your chakra drained, you're in no condition to fight," warned Kakashi. "Lee chose me to fight Kimimaro and that's what I plan to do." "Do you want to get yourself killed?" screamed Sakura, "idiot." "I won't die, Sakura," said Naruto. "I haven't beaten Orochimaru into a pulp yet." Naruto approached Gaara and Lee from behind. Gaara commanded Sakura, Sasuke, and Kakashi to leave the area because it would be unsightly. Kakashi said, "Watch yourselves," and they disappeared. Kimimaro stopped walking. Lee took off his weights, and Naruto's eyes turned red as Gaara's sand swirled around his feet. With bones growing out of his hands like claws, Kimimaro shot towards the team in a blur. As Gaara grabbed Kimimaro with his sand and threw him back, Lee and Naruto bounded out of the way. Kimimaro launched the broken remains at Gaara after the bone covering his hands broke. Naruto attacked, and the redhead retaliated with sand. Pulling a bone from his arm, Kimimaro held it in a kunai-like manner. Naruto used his chakra blade to slash at Kimimaro, but Kimimaro deflected the blow. As Naruto's chakra blade sliced through the hardened bone, the Sound Ninja's eyes widened. As Naruto punched Kimimaro, Lee emerged from behind and slammed his foot into him. As they struck bone and fled, both Leaf Ninja swore. Kimimaro noticed the sand cloud looming over Gaara as they disappeared. As sand shuriken, the clumps of sand threw themselves at Kimimaro. Kimimaro called, "Dance of the Lily," while keeping his forearms together. Bone formed a huge shield across his arms. Sand shattered in all directions as it struck the bone. From behind his shield, Kimimaro appeared. He tore his arms from the bone and threw the two parts at Lee and Gaara. Before Lee could react, Naruto appeared in front of him, splitting the shield in two as Gaara grabbed it and used his sand to crush the other. Gaara threw more sand shuriken to cover them as Naruto and Lee charged at Kimimaro once more. Naruto flickered with Lee and made multiple shadow clones. Kimimaro knelt down close to the floor. Dance of the Willow. All of the clones that were approaching were speared by bone lances that protruded from Kimimaro's joints. Naruto and Lee landing on his back first took him by surprise, but he bounced back and sharpened his spine into more spikes. Lee and Naruto jumped off, landing close to Gaara. With his curse mark spreading across his body, Kimimaro snarled. High in the air, Kimimaro launched himself. Dance of the Cherry Blossom. Sharp pieces of bone protruded from the white-haired man's skin, and his arms rippled. Kimimaro whirled in midair, scattering the pieces everywhere. Although Gaara's sand served as a barrier, the blades tore right through it. The piece sliced his right shoulder and cheek, and he cursed. As the air was filled with bone fragments, Lee and Naruto hid behind debris. As the rain of fragments subsided, Naruto turned to watch. He watched as Kimimaro reached behind his neck and pulled his spine out while yelling. With his chakra blades at the ready, Naruto charged at the Sound Ninja. Kimimaro swung at Naruto, catching him in the stomach after dodging the blade. Blood trickled from the whip's gash in Naruto's chest as he was flung backwards into a wall. Another shower of bone shrapnel was directed at Naruto, and he flickered. Finger bullet drill. Raising his hands, Kimimaro threw a barrage of bones at Gaara. Gaara barely stopped the bones with a wall of sand in response. All of Kimimaro's skin rippled as he growled. When Kimimaro's skeleton appeared to emerge from his body, the Leaf Ninja's eyes grew wide. Bone clone. Gaara put up a wall of sand to shield the team as the skeleton charged forward. It pierced Gaara's wall of sand, scattering the three. Dance of the Orchid. Sharpening into blades, bones appeared along Kimimaro's forearms and shins. Lee ducked as Kimimaro lunged at him, attempting to slit him with graceful movements. When the skeleton selected Naruto as its target, he added wind chakra to his blades. As the skeleton attempted to strike him, he cut off its arms. The skeleton stumbled backwards after Naruto kicked its skull. Gaara was asked by Naruto, "How does it stay together?" Gaara whispered, you have to use chakra strings. With a leap forward, Naruto sliced the skeleton in two with his chakra blade. Kimimaro intensified his attacks on Lee after witnessing his clone fall. Glaring at the ninja with the bones, Naruto gathered chakra in his hands and spun it into a sphere. After observing Naruto's behavior, Kimimaro ejected Gaara and Lee. Dance of the Rose. Petals, from Kimimaro, bone plates grew until they formed a perfect sphere. After colliding with the bone shell, Naruto's Sunarashi Rasengan burst into the dome sandstorm. When Naruto realized the bone shroud was still intact, his smirk vanished along with his sandstorm. I heard Kimimaro say, "Dance of the Rose." Thorns, from inside the bone shell. Just as the surface of the bone sphere changed and spines began to protrude in all directions, Naruto launched himself away from it. Naruto returned to Gaara and Lee, cursing. "His defenses are greater than before," Gaara whispered. Kimimaro dashed into the open as the bone shell broke. Instinctively, Gaara grabbed Kimimaro's ankle with his sand, pulled his feet out from under him, and lifted him into the air. Gaara broke the bricks beneath the sound ninja by slamming Kimimaro into the remains of a building. In the battlefield, Gaara persisted in beating Kimimaro off the debris in the ground before slamming him into the ground. Naruto tied a cloth around his bleeding arm and grunted, "He won't be coming back after that." A tail emerging from the dust-filled crater disproved Naruto's theory. As Kimimaro stumbled to his feet in his level 2 curse mark state, Naruto and Lee prepared. Kimimaro growled as his skin was covered in bone plates, giving him the appearance of an armored dinosaur. Naruto and Lee charged at Kimimaro, slamming a barrage of blows at the bone ninja. Kimimaro lashed out with his limbs and tail, shrugging off all of Naruto's and Lee's blows, while Naruto cursed. Kimimaro launched Lee and Naruto into the air, and both of them landed in a cloud of sand. With his blades flying, Naruto snarled and charged at Kimimaro once more. Both of Naruto's chakra blades only scratched Kimimaro's armor when he attempted to ram them into him. Naruto wavered, dodging Kimimaro's strikes as he looked for a hole in Kimimaro's defense. Lee grunted, "There must be some crack in his armor." Hinata called out, "Naruto," over the battlefield. Hinata was standing just outside the line of fire when Naruto looked up. She yelled, "His joints are the weak points." After giving Hinata the thumbs up, Naruto launched an attack. He wavered, then reappeared behind Kimimaro, slashing at Kimimaro's shoulder joints. Kimimaro screamed in agony and slapped Naruto. He reappeared with Naruto slashing at his elbows before disappearing once more. Kimimaro tried to keep Naruto away by extending his spines over his body, but he ducked between them and slashed his blade into the back of Kimimaro's knees. Glaring up at the three, Kimimaro fell to the ground. "Make it quick," mumbled Naruto. Before he was entirely covered in sand, Naruto caught a final glimpse of the icy eyes as Gaara surrounded Kimimaro with it. Gaara crushed the sand with his closed fist. A single drop of blood leaked onto the ground from the sand. When a roar came from Gaara's sand coffin, Naruto turned away and started to head back to the camp, but he quickly turned around. With blood streaming from his wounds everywhere, Kimimaro exploded out of the sand and charged at Naruto. With a roar, Kimimaro carved a huge bone blade on his arms and declared, "I will not fail Lord Orochimaru again." Kimimaro lunged at Naruto, who snarled, "You won't take a hint." While avoiding the insane attack, Naruto pushed the small chakra he had left into his right hand and whipped it into a Rasengan. With his razor sharp bones ready to sever Naruto, Kimimaro threw himself at him. After preparing himself, Naruto struck the bone wielder with the chakra sphere. As Naruto leapt out of the path of destruction, Kimimaro was immediately engulfed by the sandstorm. Kimimaro watched in horror as the powerful sandstorm ground down his bone weapons. As the sand-laden wind wore him down, the white-haired man yelled, "Lord Orochimaru!" over the rushing wind. Hinata began to run before the dust settled. She located Naruto with her Byakugan, and he fell into her embrace. Hinata nearly collapsed under Naruto's weight, but she managed to stay upright and guided him to the medical tent for a nap and a sarcastic reprimand from Tsunade for using up all of his chakra. Heishi threw the curtain door aside and rushed into the headquarters tent. His mouth was a snarl, and his brow was furrowed in anger. Tsunade glanced around the Toad Sage while Jiraiya, sitting on his desk, glanced over his shoulder at the newcomer. Shizune was bandaging his arm when Naruto got up from his chair in front of Tsunade's desk. Shizune retreated from the enraged Hyuga, forgetting about the bandage. Heishi ignored everyone else as his gaze remained fixed on Naruto. Heishi insisted, "Where is she?" "Where is who?" answered Naruto. When Hyoshi's Byakugan activated, his temples swelled and he said, "Don't play dumb with me. Where is Hinata?" He struck Naruto in the shoulder, causing his arm to become numb. "I'll ask once more then, it's your vital organs. Where have you hidden my daughter Fox?" Snapping, Naruto used his good arm to seize the front of Hyoshi's kimono. As he was raised off the ground, Hyuga gasped. "I don't give a damn if you're a noble or not, call me Fox once more and I'll still beat you 7 shades of blue. Hinata is hiding because you and the Council of Morons want to throw her out." Jiraiya told the blonde to put him down. Naruto. Don't give him more fuel for his fire. Reluctantly, Naruto moved away from Hyuga and lowered him. Hyuga calmed himself and smoothed his kimono. It is the tradition in the Hyuga family for a woman who marries out of the family to have her Byakugan sealed. Tsunade emerged from behind her desk and demanded, "But what about disowning her? When she chooses to marry someone against the councils and my decision?" Naruto snarled. Hiyashi took a step back. Jiraiya grabbed the back of Naruto's jacket, but Tsunade held up her arm to block him. Naruto gave Tsunade a scowl. Tsunade approached Hiyashi by lowering her arm. "You do realize I could remove your heart and let you watch it stop beating," she said quietly and calmly. Naruto's frown turned into a smile. Hyuga turned pale. Did she pose a threat to him? Lord of the Hyuga house, Hyuga? Naruto has proven his worth time after time, and not just in this war, in all the time he was with the village. You and the Council of Morons can't get it through your skulls that he isn't the Nine Tails but Naruto Uzumaki, son of Minato Namikaze. Hiyoshi's jaw nearly fell open as his eyes widened. As Tsunade scowled and Naruto snarled, Hyuga paused and asked, "Are you saying that that boy is the son of the 4th Hokage?" Tsunade gave a nod. "Show me proof," insisted Hyuga. Jiraiya's hold on Naruto's jacket was broken, and he reached inside. Instead of drawing a weapon as Hyuga had anticipated, Naruto produced a folded piece of paper. He gave Hyuga a thrust. "Read," said Naruto. Hyuga grabbed the paper and read it after unfolding it. As he read, his face went completely white. After giving Naruto a fierce look and hurling the paper at him, Hyuga bounded from the tent. When Tsunade asked, "What was that paper?" Naruto picked up the paper and placed it back in his jacket. "My birth certificate," he said. 1-0 to Naruto, Jiraiya said with a smile while ruffling Naruto's hair. That should really put a wrench in their works. There was a commotion in the Hyuga compound. The council was thrown into a tizzy of meetings that all ended in arguments after learning about Naruto's ancestry and Hinata's disappearance. The oldest Hyuga exclaimed, "That monster can't be related to the 4th. A female council member retorted, "Are you calling the Hokage a liar?" Hyuga claimed she was listed as the attending when the boy was born. "There is the possibility the certificate is forged. Watch your tongue, that talk could be considered treason." "Well, there is that possibility, she is fond of the fox brat." Hyuga listened to the council debate in silence before being startled back to the present when the oldest council member slammed his hands on the table. "If he is the 4th's son, then he has to prove it," exclaimed the elderly man. "He has already mastered the 4th's jutsu, the Rasengan, and created 2 unique variants of it." "That proves nothing. The Sannin Jiraiya also mastered the Rasengan. You can't deny the resemblance with the 4th. "Coincidence," said the elderly man with a haughty air. The woman whispered, "You seem almost desperate to ignore or dismiss his lineage." The council leader yelled, "Enough, he has to prove himself if he is the 4th's son." As Sakura stirred the ashes of the dying fire in front of her in an attempt to keep it going, cricket chirps pierced the evening air. With more fire fuel in tow, Sasuke emerged. He placed it close to the fire and took a seat beside Sakura. Naruto flopped down beside Sasuke and Sakura, looking exhausted, and both ninja looked up at a groan. "Something wrong?" Sasuke inquired, anticipating the response. "If one more person asks if I'm really the son of the 4th again, I swear I'll let the fox take control." "What did you expect?" Sakura asked. "The most hated boy in the village is revealed to be the son of the one who defeated the 9 Tails is going to be a surprise." Naruto moaned, "Why didn't I just beat Hyuga senseless?" Sasuke changed the topic by asking, "Where's Hinata by the way?" "I'm not saying. I wouldn't put it past Hyuga or the Hyuga Council to spy on me." Sakura whispered, "They really don't like you." Naruto said, "Nope," and yawned. "Have either of you had a decent night's sleep recently?" asked Sasuke. Both Naruto and Sakura shook their heads. "Most of the sound attacks come at dawn or dusk. They're ruining my beauty sleep," Sakura said. Once this is all over, I'm going back to Suna with Hinata and not getting out of bed for it a month. When Naruto realized what he had just said, he flushed. Sakura appeared ready to punch him, and Sasuke grinned. Naruto attempted to reassure Sakura, but it was too late. I meant sleeping. Sakura slammed Naruto into a heap of debris with her fist. According to a sound ninja, Lord Orochimaru, Kimimaro had been vanquished. Grabbing the ninja, Orochimaru threw him through the trees. He slid to the ground after colliding with the biggest. Even with my modifications, the sound 5 were useless, he gushed. They still caused heavy casualties, Lord Orochimaru, Kabuto said, attempting to reassure him. Orochimaru was cautiously approached by another sound ninja. Orochimaru turned to face the spy, who ducked into a low bow. What? He insisted on. The spy stammered, Lord Orochimaru, the leaf is the Kyuubi brat. Spit it out, growled the snake. The Kyuubi vessel is the son of the Yondaime. The frown on Orochimaru's face turned to a sneer. This opens a whole new method of war, he said with a sly smile and a twitchy tongue. Naruto slipped through the village and out of the campsite just as dawn was breaking. For the third time, he checked his surroundings to make sure no one was following him. Naruto moved into the trees behind the village, leaving the houses and buildings behind, and made his way to the forest's deepest area. To keep from being followed, Naruto was employing every stealth technique he knew. Pushing past the final cluster of bushes, he came out into the secret clearing where he had made plans to meet Hinata. Hinata appeared from the leaves as a rustling sound came from the opposite side of the clearing. Without wasting any time, Naruto began to get closer to Hinata. "Miss me?" inquired Naruto. Leaning against Naruto, Hinata nodded. When Naruto heard someone approaching, his ears perked up. He got up and positioned himself in a fighting stance as the person drew nearer. A white dog the size of a wolf burst out of the foliage with a loud bark. Before Naruto could respond, Akamaru pinned him to the ground. After Akamaru, Kiba emerged, followed by Neji. "Naruto," Neji said, "your stealth skills have greatly improved." Naruto muttered, "I'm surprised you found me," and then turned to face Kiba. "Will you please call off Akamaru? I'm having trouble breathing." After giving Akamaru a nod, Kiba allowed Naruto to stand up. As Akamaru wandered over to Hinata, who petted him lovingly, Naruto brushed himself down. Naruto, a little annoyed that his time with Hinata had been cut short, questioned, "Are we under attack or did you just come here to set Akamaru on me?" "The Hyuga Council has decided that you must prove yourself as the heir of the 4th Hokage," Neji said. Naruto mumbled, "What more do they want? I have the birth certificate." Kiba told him, "You'll have to ask them yourself," as he began to lead the way back to the village. As the group moved from the forest into the houses, Naruto took Hinata's hand. As they got closer to the Hyuga mansion, they passed other ninja. Naruto caught a glimpse of their conversation as he heard the same mutterings that followed him everywhere. Way that boy could be the son of the... When the group arrived at the Hyuga compound's gates, Naruto chose to ignore them. As they turned to face the imposing doors, he sensed Hinata trembling and she tightened her hold on her hand. "If they try anything, run and find Gaara, Temari, or Kankuro," Naruto said softly in her ear. With a nod, Hinata opened the big gates, letting Heishi and the Hyuga Council enter. They looked back at Naruto as he glared at them. Naruto Uzumaki, the head of the council, stated, "You claim to be the son of the 4th Hokage and now you must prove you are his flesh and blood." With his arms folded, Naruto questioned, "How? I assume the birth certificate isn't sufficient." Heishi commanded, "Neji, come here." Neji moved to Hiyashi's side and obeyed instinctively. "There will be 3 challenges, each testing a quality of the 4th, strength, agility and cunning, or lack of in your case. It has been agreed that Neji is the strongest of the Hyuga branch family. You and he will duel. If you can defeat him, then you will move on to the next challenge," Heishi stated bluntly. "What will beating Neji prove? The 4th Hokage was the strongest ninja this village has ever seen. If you are his flesh and blood, then you should have inherited his strength." To Neji, Naruto snarled, "Sorry about this," while clenching his fists. Neji asked as he prepared himself, "Ready?" As the noise increased and the ground began to tremble, Naruto's ears perked up and he turned. Shouting, "We'll do this later," Naruto wavered. As the enemy advanced on the Leaf Village, a Leaf Ninja charged at them and was easily dispatched. Another wave of ninja attempted to attack, but Orochimaru swung his sword and sent them flying. A Chunin shouted, "Fall back," and retreated from the snake. Naruto's arrival was signaled by a flicker of sand, and Sasuke, Sakura, and Kakashi followed. "Ah, just the fox I wanted to see," Orochimaru said, a broad grin spreading across his face. With a casual swipe of his sword, Naruto knocked away Orochimaru's kunai before putting both of his hands flat on the ground. Hissed, summoning jutsu, reanimation. The coffin and the kanji on its front caught the attention of every Konoha person. Fourth, a dark figure emerged as the lid dropped. Before Orochimaru could back away as the coffin rose to the ground, he quickly took a foot out of his robe and placed it inside the former corpse. As their leader left the battlefield, the Sound Army trailed behind him. The fourth Hokage stood in front of Konoha, and the entire world froze. When Kakashi lifted his headband and Sakura assumed a fighting stance, Sasuke's Sharingan flickered, but they both froze when Naruto spoke. "Stay back," he commanded in a stern, deadpan voice, "this is my fight." They locked eyes, both ninja motionless. Naruto took another kunai out of his pouch and glared into the fourth's dead eyes. "It's not my dad," Naruto continued to repeat in his mind. They both began to move simultaneously, running toward one another while brandishing their weapons. The two ninja flickered and disappeared just before they met. As Naruto and the fourth appeared in front of him and began striking each other, Sasuke leapt out of the way. The Yondaime was kicked in the side, and Naruto struck him in the chest with his fist. Both of them disappeared once more. After landing on a pile of debris, Naruto had to flicker once more while the fourth punched him. The debris where the former Hokage's fist had struck Naruto, shattering him. Naruto emerged behind his father's image and attempted to strike Minato's head with his foot, but the fourth disappeared as it made contact. Minato's feet struck Naruto's back, throwing him forward. As he battered Naruto, Minato continued his attack, appearing to be everywhere at once. Fox. Chakra. For the first time, Naruto felt the red chakra of the nine tails almost instantly after he screamed inside his head. Naruto continued fighting because he didn't want to consider why the demon was being so helpful. Without stopping, Naruto formed his chakra blades and sent a chakra shockwave at Minato, who ducked and came at Naruto again as the blonde sandstorm flickered and landed far from the fourth. Dropping low, Naruto struck Minato's stomach with his fist and chakra blade. As the wound healed, the former Hokage stumbled away, but Naruto wasn't going to slow down. He slashed at the Yondaime until he flickered out of reach. The two ninjas faced each other and stood ready. After the attack he had just escaped, Naruto felt as though everything had stopped. Naruto muttered, "No choice," and charged while holding a Rasengan in his right hand. Minato launched himself at his son while spinning a sphere of chakra. A female Anbu yelled, "Lady Hokage," as he hurried into her tent. As another crash reverberated throughout the village, Tsunade demanded of the masked Kunoichi, "What's going on?" Orochimaru has raised the fourth. As she made her way to the battlefield, Tsunade unleashed a barrage of curses. She called out to the group of medical professionals, "All medical teams with me," before turning back to the Anbu and asking, "How many casualties?" "So far none," she said, "but Uzumaki is holding off the fourth." "Naruto is?" Tsunade stammered and nearly fell. "Yes ma'am, and they've started to use the Rasengan against each other." Tsunade muttered to herself, "This is getting really nasty very quickly. Give orders to leave at the first sign of the fourth and stay out of Naruto's way. He is, in my opinion, the only person capable of defeating Minato." "Be careful," someone let out a scream. Even without shadow clones, Naruto seemed to be everywhere at once, scattering sand in every direction with each flicker in the battlefield that was Konoha, and Tsunade instinctively ducked as he landed next to her and disappeared again without even appearing to see her. Shizune muttered, "The name Sandstorm really suits him," as she choked on a mouthful of sand. There was a chakra explosion as the two Rasengan spheres collided, and Minato and Naruto were flung apart. Naruto was able to right himself, but the fourth crashed into a pile of rubble that had once been a house. Minato got up and made another Rasengan, but he got caught in the debris that the spinning sphere had thrown up. Minato erupted from the dust cloud as Naruto landed, but Naruto dodged again and sent a chakra shockwave at Minato's back. "This is crazy." As more debris flew, Sakura yelled, "If they continue, Orochimaru won't have anything left to destroy." With chakra blades in both hands, Naruto charged at Minato, ducked at the last second, and slashed through the newest Rasengan in Minato's hand, knocking them both off their feet with the chakra burst. "I have to stop this." Naruto, however, gasping for air, says, "I can't keep this up much longer." When the two spheres collided this time, the ninja weren't flung apart. Instead, a storm of chakra erupted around them as Naruto charged again, layering his Rasengan with wind element chakra. Go back. As the chakra storm intensified, sending rocks flying in all directions and breaking the ground, Tsunade let out a scream. Minato pushed him backwards, and Naruto gritted his teeth and pushed back, dumping more chakra into his Rasengan as it shattered and lost power, causing its surface to ripple. Time seemed to stop as Minato's hand touched Naruto, and he saw his father's warm smile and his mouth moving but missing the words. Naruto reached out to return the touch, but Minato's smiling face crumbled into dust as his hand brushed him and he was swallowed up by the sandstorm. The dome of chakra ebbed and the sandstorm died. Naruto was ready for another attack when he saw Minato reaching out with his other hand, but he was paralyzed when Minato's open palm ruffled his hair. After pushing her way through the dense bushes and into the hidden clearing, Hinata discovered Naruto sitting in the middle of the clearing, holding his knees. Hinata sat next to Naruto and said, "Everyone's worried about you." Naruto did not answer. According to Hinata, nobody got hurt because you protected them, tying a different technique. Naruto's eyes appeared glazed and distant, and he was still silent. As the stars began to fill the sky, Hinata allowed the quiet to return to the clearing. "That's the first time I've ever seen his face for real," explained Naruto at the end. Hinata slid closer to Naruto and took one of his hands in hers, not surprised by the lack of energy in his voice. The battle with the fourth Hokage had left a deeper psychological scar than a physical one, and the sight of the fourth Hokage fighting under Orochimaru's control had raised spirits throughout the remains of Konoha. The only positive aspect of the fourth's appearance was that Tsunade had decided to begin organizing violent counterattacks, but of all the Konoha and Suna forces, Naruto appeared to have been the most affected by the battle. Hinata had finally succeeded in persuading Naruto into allowing Tsunade to examine him. The Konoha 12 were dispersed around the medical tent while Tsunade examined Naruto, and none of them felt comfortable with his depressed state. Eventually, the fifth emerged from the tent and was immediately surrounded. Tsunade told the anxious crowd, "He's fine physically, but he's emotionally mixed up from fighting his father. Watch him closely." When the council insisted on organizing the counterattacks, Shizune dragged Tsunade away, and the ninja disbanded except for Sasuke. The Uchiha shoved the canvas flap aside and went inside, where he saw Naruto sitting next to Hinata on one of the makeshift beds, separate from the other patients. He then crossed to the two and sat across from them on an empty cot. "How are you?" His voice was unusually soft as he asked. "Okay," Naruto said with a shrug. "Liar," retorted Sasuke, "you feel like they're being pulled simultaneously in all directions. You're not sure whether to be happy, sad, or angry." Hinata attempted to interrupt Sasuke's lecture, but he refused, and Naruto lowered his gaze. "You're going to hate Orochimaru once your feelings have calmed down." Sasuke broke off, the memories still raw. "Believe me, I've been through this after Itachi. Hate is a dangerous feeling. It blinds you to those around you, and when finally look around you'll find yourself alone." Naruto noticed sincerity in his eyes as he looked up. "Besides," said Sasuke in a lighter tone, "I can't let you defeat Orochimaru by yourself. I'd like to give him a try as well." Sasuke got up and walked away. He said, "Just think about that," and walked away. Quote. The tent was filled with a cloud of cigarette smoke that wouldn't have looked out of place hovering over a poker game, and Shikamaru flicked the stub of a cigarette to the floor and ground it out with his foot as Tsunade studied the Konoha map spread out on the table in front of her, each colored marker marking an enemy or allied position. "That's a filthy habit," Tsunade said without realizing at the time. Shikamaru responded, "Something I picked up from Asuma Sensei, while lighting another." Tsunade shook her head after moving 2 blue markers to the right and 3 to the left. Tsunade whispered, "Whatever we try leaves us open on at least 2 fronts," as they put the pieces back where they belonged. Shikamaru took a long drag from his cigarette and leaned against one of the tent supports, trying to think of a strategy that he and Tsunade hadn't already tried and rejected. He looked at the map and positions again, not really paying much attention, but then something clicked, and he levered himself off the post and crossed to the table and began moving markers all over the map. Tsunade stood and watched his feverish movements and the rapt expression on his face, but Shikamaru was so engrossed in his actions that he didn't notice his cigarette going out as it ran out of tobacco. With a victorious grin, he finally stepped back and wiped his forehead. "You know Shikamaru," Tsunade laughed. "I think that's the most effort I've ever seen you put into anything." Shikamaru grinned as well, putting his cigarette down and grinding it out with a sense of completion. Shizune was surprised by the smoke cloud when she peeked around the tent flap. "Do we have a strategy?" She choked on the fumes and asked nervously. "We have a plan," enclosed Tsunade. The majority of the Konoha 12 were huddled around a stumbling fire close to the entrance of the tent, sheltering from the rain and waiting for orders. Ino observed, "They've been in there for almost 3 hours," while she worked to maintain the fire. As the fire hissed and dwindled, Shoji remarked, "Shikamaru is the only person who can get us out of this mess." Kiba muttered, "Naruto's meeting with the Hyuga Council," in an attempt to continue the discussion. Shino remarked, "I wonder how the council is going to react to the battle with the fourth," as the fire died and surrendered the ghost, leaving behind a pitiful whip of wind. Quote. In the courtyard of the Hyuga mansion, Naruto stood in front of the Hyuga Council and Heishi, with Sakura to his right and Hinata to his left. The rain persisted in its steady stream until it appeared to run out of steam and stopped, but the gray clouds continued to hover overhead, threatening more rain. "Are you prepared to prove yourself, Uzumaki?" As Neji stepped into the middle of the courtyard, Heishi made a demand. Naruto remained silent. "Answer me, Uzumaki," Heishi said coldly. "Naruto is in no condition to fight," Sakura argued, "and the fight with the fourth should have settled this." One of the council members told her, "You have no reason to be present at this proof of blood. Either be silent or leave." Sakura became enraged, considering retaliating, but decided against it. Neji adopted the gentle fist stance, while Naruto stayed still. "You are trying my patience. Your non-compliance will result in. Remain quiet." A harsh, elderly voice reverberated throughout the courtyard. The council members bowed as she entered the courtyard and shuffled towards them, and all eyes in the courtyard immediately turned to the source of the voice, an elderly woman leaning on a cane, her long gray hair tied back so it flowed down her back in a manner similar to Hinata's, wearing a lilac kimono with a flower pattern along the hem, her Byakugan eyes nearly white, but Naruto felt as though she could see right through him. "Who is she?" As the elderly woman proceeded toward the throng, Naruto asked Hinata out of the corner of his mouth. "Grandma Himeka," Hinata muttered, "is the main branch's leader. However, she lets my father and the council handle the majority of Hyuga matters." Himeka walked past the council and stopped in front of Naruto, leaning on her stick. Although she was a head shorter than Naruto, her stern gaze made him uneasy. Naruto noticed the resemblance between Hinata and her grandmother and pondered whether the elderly woman would resemble Hinata much if she were younger. "Am I to assume that you are Naruto Uzumaki, young man?" Naruto gave a nod. "A Yondaime's son, and the person who rescued my granddaughter in the forest from an enemy ninja." Once more, Naruto nodded. "Show me the document," Himeka firmly demanded. Naruto took the scroll with his birth certificate out of his pocket and gave it to the elderly woman. Himeka looked at the scroll and certificate for a moment before returning it to Naruto. She then walked around him, examining him from all sides. "I can see why Hinata has fallen for you, a handsome young man like yourself." "But Mom," Heishi attempted to object. "Avoid disturbing Heishi. You are not too old to be told to take a moment to reflect on your actions while standing in a corner. Even though the Hyuga clan has been endowed with the ability to see what others cannot see, you still choose to take people at face value." Himeka scowled at her son over her shoulder. She said, "You and the council are too arrogant. You all treat this boy like a fox rather than a human being. Before any of you were born, I was a member of the Konoha Council, and I saw the fight against the Kyuubi. The demon that tore through our village is nothing like this boy. I can see the Yondaime in this boy in front of me, as I served under him. As Himeka spoke, Naruto stumbled. Did he actually resemble his father? Something about the old bad being senile was muttered by a council member, and Himeka turned, glaring at the shrinking council audience. Just because I'm twice the age of any of you don't think I can't take you, Himeka snapped. One council member attempted to argue, but the words, "I have spoken," which even made Naruto shudder. As the head of the Hyuga family, I declare the matter resolved and closed to further discussion. Himeka's expression softened as she turned to Hinata and said, I give you permission to court my granddaughter, Naruto, and I approve of your relationship with this man. Naruto wanted to give the elderly woman a hug, but Hinata arrived first, embracing her grandmother so tightly that she was on the verge of fainting. Hinata then let her go, and Himeka smoothed her kimono. Come with me and Hinata, and we'll have tea in the veranda. You can tell me about yourself, Himeka said, taking Naruto by the arm. Himeka glanced back over her shoulder at Heishi. Heishi, be a good son and bring some of my favorite herbal tea to the veranda. Yes, mother, sighed Heishi, knowing that he was not going to defeat his mother. There was a table in the center of the veranda and a scattering of cushions around it, and Himeka slowly lowered herself onto a large cushion as Naruto and Hinata sat opposite her. Naruto was careful to remember his manners as Himeka began to get to know her granddaughter's boyfriend. Himeka led Naruto and Hinata through the mansion to a small garden with a low porch overlooking it. Naruto, I saw the altercation with your father, even though my eyesight may not be as good as it once was. Are you aware of what he told you? With a sorrowful shake of his head, Naruto muttered, I couldn't hear, as he gazed out into the garden. Himeka said, well I do, as Naruto's head jerked up. How? Naruto suffocated. Himeka grinned broadly and said, I read his lips with my Byakugan, and he said, I'm proud of you, son. After the tea was served, the conversation resumed after Heishi, who had been carrying a tray with the tea, appeared. He appeared to be about to give Naruto a shady look but decided against it after Himeka gave him a warning glance, but Naruto was too busy trying to gather his thoughts to notice. As she sipped her tea, Himeka remarked, just so you know Naruto, I expect a lot of great grandchildren from you and Hinata. Hinata turned red as Naruto spluttered and choked on his tea. Grandma, squeaked Hinata. Gaara finished repairing the village wall when he noticed something in the forest. Sand swirled as he prepared, and a low hiss drifted from the leaves, making Gaara tense. The redhead jumped out of the way as a huge snake slammed into the wall and hissed angrily at missing its target. Gaara grabbed the snake's head with his sand and threw it away from the wall, and the monster retreated and lunged at him again, its fangs bared. Gaara's sand caught both of the giant reptile's open jaws, stopping its strike, but its tail whipped out and hit the wall, knocking Gaara off balance. The snake shook off the sand and hissed, its tongue flickering. Naruto appeared, followed by Sasuke. The Uchiha looked at the snake and recognized it. Naruto, Gaara, this snake belongs to Orochimaru, Sasuke replied, not the most powerful snake of his but it is the most poisonous. The snake spat at Sasuke, who sidestepped, the jet of liquid hitting the wall and starting to burn a hole in the stone. Naruto's chakra blades materialized and Sasuke's eyes went red as the snake opened its hood and reared up as high as it could. They all dodged the second stream of venom and Gaara hurled a volley of sand shuriken at the snake. Sasuke added Gaara's attack by firing several fireballs. The reptile shrugged off the attacks as Naruto appeared on its head. Snake felt Naruto appear and tried to throw him off. Even with chakra anchoring him to the snake's head, Naruto lost his footing and was thrown off, but he managed to slash through its right eye as he was tossed. The reptile had howled and hissed in pain, spitting poison in every direction. Gaara ducked behind the wall as Naruto and Sasuke dived into the trees. Naruto looked at Sasuke and he nodded. They both dashed out from the trees, Sasuke spitting fire and Naruto throwing kunai. Sasuke's darted right and kicked off the nearest tree as Naruto slashed at the snake with his chakra blades. Sasuke emerged from the trees again, kicked off the village wall and landed on the tail of the snake. Lightning sparked in Sasuke's hand before he rushed along the reptile, Chidori cutting a deep gash through the snake's scales and flesh. He launched himself clear of the snake as it thrashed in agony. The snake's tongue flickered as it found Sasuke's scent and charged him. The snake seemed intent on revenge as it thundered after Sasuke bashing trees out of its path. Naruto flickered into the path of the snake, chakra blades ready. The snake didn't slow down as it launched its attack on Naruto. The blonde focused his wind chakra into his blades and stretched them as far as he could before unleashing a massive shockwave. The air blade hit the snake and tore through it as if it wasn't there, cutting it clean in two. The snake's momentum kept it going and the two half landed on either side of Naruto with an earth-shaking crash. Naruto sank to his knees as Gaara and Sasuke joined him. Gaara glanced at the snake's already disintegrating body. Must be its own poison, he observed. Too much chakra? Naruto nodded in response to Sasuke's question. You have really got to stop doing that, the Uchiha muttered, shaking his head. As she assisted Naruto in standing, Gaara muttered, frantic attack with little plan, describing signs of desperation. Naruto was sitting on the remains of a building, staring up at the face of his father carved into the mountain, when the clouds finally opened again, soaking the village with water. The rain pattered across the broken buildings and scattered tents of Konoha, and the water flowing down the stone faces of the Hokages had collected into streams that resembled tears. A voice said, "The pain of the village is their pain," as an umbrella drew closer to Naruto's perch and he glanced up at the stone faces. Naruto recognized the voice and kimono as belonging to Himeka, and Hinata's sandals were barely visible beneath the umbrella. The rain expresses their emotions whenever the village is in pain, the elderly Hyuga added. The rain was the only sound as the two gazed up at the Hokages. How was my father, Himeka? Naruto inquired abruptly. Himeka turned back to Minato's stone portrait after glancing up at the drenched blonde. After a lengthy silence, she remarked, Minato was a strong man, kind and cheerful, and wise beyond his years. He was rarely angry and seemed to be unfazed by anything. I recall that when he wanted my advice, he would frequently join me on my veranda. Although he was younger than me and only had eyes for one woman, I was briefly smitten with him. What was it he needed to know? Your mother, said Himeka, the legendary fourth Hokage had no idea how to deal with your mother. What was it? How does your mother feel? She was best described as a tomboy, but she would always remember her manners, Himeka concluded. Except for manners, she was very similar to you. Himeka paused, and she wouldn't take no for an answer. Naruto appeared outraged, and Hinata suppressed a laugh. Naruto said, my manners aren't that bad, as he leapt from his seat and landed beside Hinata and Himeka. Himeka gave a mild reprimand, saying, you'll get a death of cold sitting there in the rain. After taking Hinata's hand, Naruto led the three of them back to the Hyuga mansion. While some were on guard duty, the majority of the remaining Konoha forces were sleeping. However, a couple of blonde and raven-haired shinobi were sitting quietly on two piles of rubble outside the campsite that had once been a village. With their legs crossed and eyes closed, Naruto and Sasuke appeared to be meditating, but they were actually deep in thought. Opening his eyes, Sasuke turned to face Naruto. I still don't know how you do this, he grumbled, especially with a mind as chaotic as yours. It just takes practice, Naruto remarked, hardly moving, but it gives you a chance to clear your mind. Gaara came up behind the two and said, what are you two doing? I'm trying to teach Sasuke how to meditate, Naruto answered. As if it wasn't bad enough when you decide to wall yourself off from the real world, Gaara grumbled, but Sakura is looking for both of you. Something about missing 3 meals in a row. With his eyes still closed, Sasuke grumbled, I don't consider the rations we're getting a meal. While standing, Naruto remarked, you know what Sakura's like when she's angry, so we'd better get going. Naruto guided the group through the Konoha ruins and forest on their way back to the campsite. When the campsite and Sakura's irate face were revealed, the blonde went pale. Before Sakura could begin lecturing him, Naruto argued whether it was worthwhile to hide behind Gaara, but Hinata saved him. Taking Naruto by the hand, Hinata pulled him in the direction of the mess tent. She forced Naruto to sit beside her at the fire after he had gathered his food. Hinata gave Naruto a close look to make sure he ate. Sakura, meanwhile, had focused her ire and attention on Sasuke. As other ninja went to their beds, the light conversation around the fire quickly died down. Before long, Hinata's head was resting on Naruto's shoulder as her eyes drooped and he sagged sideways. Naruto placed his arm around Hinata's shoulder and set aside his now empty tray. Naruto made the decision to go to bed as well as the fire began to go out. He pulled Hinata into his embrace. Everything will soon come to an end. There is not much strength left on either side. With Hinata still asleep in his arms, Naruto pondered as he strode off in the direction of the Hyuga compound. Dot 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 quote. Sasuke abandoned his sleep and crept from his tent. He strode off through the ruins, ignoring the clouds' threat of rain. The dark-haired shinobi wandered mindlessly, absorbed in his own recollections. The silence of the night was broken by an owl, and he looked around. In front of him was the Uchiha district entrance. With his teeth clenched, Sasuke entered the streets of Uchiha. Sasuke found it odd to see the streets where he had grown up in ruins. Sasuke turned to look when he saw a flash of movement, but the street was deserted. He walked on through the district, recalling a period of time before the Itachi incident. Sasuke crossed the courtyard of the long, deserted main house without giving it any thought. Before entering, he stopped at the front door. The walls had been neglected for so long that the plaster was crumbling. As his foot sank through a decaying floorboard, Sasuke swore. After pulling his foot free, he proceeded inside the house. As he went by, he noticed his former bedroom and peered inside. A flicker of movement, disappearing around a corner, tore Sasuke's focus away from his room. He chased after the shadow, hurrying after it. As he turned one corner, the shadow disappeared around another. Sasuke's Sharingan erupted in rage after chasing the flicker for several minutes. He was unable to identify the shadow despite his bloodline trait. The main hall was in front of Sasuke as he skidded around another corner. He stepped gingerly through the deteriorating boards and in. Sasuke could see the shadow had disappeared even in the dim light. When Sasuke heard a voice he detested, he spun around. "You lack hatred." The room was empty of people. Sasuke was unable to locate anyone or anything, not even with his Sharingan. Still not convinced that he had been alone in the house, Sasuke shook himself and left the room and the house, returning to the campsite. Dot 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 quote. After carefully setting Hinata on her bed, Naruto turned to go. A tug on his jacket caused him to stop. Even though Hinata was fast asleep, she was clinging to his jacket. Hinata refused to let go when Naruto attempted to pry her fingers open. With a sigh, he took off his jacket and sat beside Hinata on the bed. Naruto lay down beside Hinata, and Hinata opened her eyes a little. Naruto smiled and said, "Mind if I stay here?" Before falling back asleep, Hinata put her arms around Naruto's chest and shook her head. After releasing his jacket and throwing it to the ground, Naruto closed his eyes and fell asleep. Dot 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 quote. Sasuke surveyed the Uchiha mansion, an ancient structure illuminated by the moon. Sasuke's thoughts always seemed to return to the shadow in the mansion, regardless of what he was doing. With the Sharingan in his eyes, he strode over to the house. Sasuke inspected the house carefully, ignoring the creaking floorboards. There was silence in every part of the house, almost too quiet. Eventually, Sasuke's search brought him back to the main hall, where he found someone waiting for him. There was no mistaking the black cloak with the red clouds. "Itachi," snarled Sasuke. "Sasuke," Itachi said impassively. Sasuke demanded, "What are the Akatsuki doing here? The Akatsuki have nothing to do with my presence here. I'm here of my own will." Sasuke became enraged and charged at Itachi, sparking lightning. Sasuke was pushed away by Itachi, who grabbed his wrist, causing his Chidori to collide with the wall. Pulling his hand away from the wall, Sasuke looked at Itachi. He threw punches at his older brother and lunged at Itachi. Itachi knocked Sasuke's feet out from under him after blocking every fist. Sasuke struck the floorboards, causing them to crack beneath his back. Itachi slammed his fist into Sasuke's chest just as he was getting back up. Sasuke was hurled through a wall and backwards. When the majority of the wall Sasuke had struck collapsed, a dust and plaster cloud filled the air. A flurry of fireballs erupted from the cloud, scorching Itachi. Sasuke pounced on Itachi, taking advantage of his surprise, and slammed his foot into Itachi's stomach. After he recovered, Itachi knocked Sasuke away. Without averting their gazes, the two brothers circled one another. Sasuke threw a lump of plaster at Itachi after catching it with his foot. When Itachi attempted to swat the plaster out of the air, it broke and a dust cloud was created. Sasuke appeared behind Itachi and knocked him off balance by putting both of his feet in his back. After slamming Itachi into a wall, Sasuke snatched his cloak and flung him across the room. As Sasuke appeared beside him and kicked him once more, Itachi forced himself off the wall, stopping the blood from streaming from his nose. Sasuke persisted, determined to deny Itachi any breathing room, much less the opportunity to defend himself. Itachi turned to face Sasuke, a hint of irritation visible on his face. After running at his brother once more, Sasuke stumbled and ended up knee-deep in the boards after his foot went through the rotten floor. Sasuke realized that something must be concealed beneath the room because there was empty space beneath his foot. The floor creaked and felt like it was about to collapse as he attempted to pull away from the wood, making him freeze. Sasuke approached the door, and Itachi watched his struggle. He paused and glanced back at Sasuke. Itachi slammed his hand into one of the door supports in response to Sasuke's glare. The final support broke, causing the ceiling to groan and parts to fall. As the ceiling began to sag and drop more debris, Itachi stepped back out into the corridor. Sasuke shouted, "Itachi," as the ceiling cracked and fell. Instinctively, Sasuke used his chakra to break the last of the boards supporting him and tumbled into the shadowy area below. The house collapsed behind Itachi as he walked slowly down the corridor. As the last of the walls and beams fell away, he stepped out the front door. Itachi disappeared as soon as he heard Anbu approaching. Quote. The sound of an ear-splitting crash sent Naruto bolting upright in bed. Leaping from his bed, he ran to the window. As soon as he noticed the dust cloud rising over the rooftops, he hurried back into the room and got dressed. As Naruto reached for his jacket, Hinata sat up and rubbed her eyes. "Naruto," hinted Hinata drowsily. Naruto kissed her cheek and said, "Be back as soon as I can." Naruto ran back to the window, threw it open, and disappeared. Seeing other ninja moving toward the dust cloud, he jumped as quickly as he could across the roofs. One of the first to land in the Uchiha courtyard and witness the devastation firsthand was the Fox vessel. The former building was crowded with ninjas who were trying to figure out what had happened. A sword slammed into the ground right where Naruto had been, and he dodged as his ears perked up. Kisame swore, missed, as Naruto turned to face the bipedal shark. Naruto snarled, "If you're here, then Itachi must be somewhere nearby." "You're smarter than the last time I met you," said Kisame. "Yes, Itachi is here. But he has business with his little brother. I'm here to stop you interfering." As he prepared his chakra blades, Naruto launched an attack. Kisame said, "Maybe you're not smarter," while waving a Samahata. The blonde flickered and grinned before resurfacing behind Kisame and giving him a head kick. Kisame turned quickly, but Naruto had already left. He reappeared and used his fist to grab Kisame by the chin. As he bounced around Kisame, Naruto pushed him back. The shark jumped out of Naruto's reach and landed on a roof. Naruto slammed his foot into Samahata after launching himself after the Akatsuki member. Quote. With the return of Sasuke's senses, a moan reverberated through the shadows. He pushed his eyes open, but darkness enveloped him. Sasuke struggled to his feet after feeling for broken bones and finding none. After his eyes adapted to the darkness, he could see the faint outline of a set of stairs behind him, with a heap of debris obstructing them. Something is down here, then. With his back to the blocked exit, he pondered. Sasuke looked down as his foot landed on something. An antique oil lantern. To Sasuke's surprise, it was almost completely covered in oil when he picked it up. He blew fire while holding the lamp in one hand. The tunnel was illuminated by a spooky glow as the fire flared and flickered. As he entered the dimly lit hallway, Sasuke held the lamp aloft. A Uchiha fan carved into the rock wall caused Sasuke to pause. Thus, this was made by my family. He passed more fan carvings as he continued down the tunnel. Sasuke nearly suffered a heart attack as he glanced to his right, into a lengthy alcove in the tunnel wall. A bleached white skull gazed back at him with blank eyes. Sasuke noticed a complete skeleton spread out in the alcove as he calmed down. He noticed another skeleton in an alcove behind him. It's a crypt. He became aware. Despite his reluctance, Sasuke continued. As he descended farther, he came across more alcoves, some empty, some containing skeletons. After some time, the tunnel led to a room with painted plaster walls. Sasuke noticed a story developing as he examined each wall. Madara Uchiha's battle with the first Hokage among the Sharingan, the Mangekyo Sharingan, and the formation of the Sharingan bloodline. Sasuke's eyes grew wide as he gazed at the carving at the end of the room. It depicted a demon, clearly the Nine Tails, bowing down in front of a human wearing a Uchiha fan on the back of his robes. The crazed Nine Tails was depicted in the painting's second half, ready to attack Konoha. So you really just wanted to conquer the village? Sasuke threw the lamp at the painting after losing his temper. As the lamp broke, flaming oil poured onto the wall. He ran back up the tunnel, turning away from the chamber. Since he discovered the stairs too soon and they weren't blocked by debris, he must have taken the wrong turn. At the top of the stairs, Sasuke broke through the covering to discover that he was in a different area of the Uchiha district. He heard the roar of combat and hurled himself to the closest roof. Sasuke glanced at the scene in front of him and then turned when he sensed a presence behind him. On the other side of the roof stood Itachi. As Sasuke glared at Itachi, Sharingan blazing, a swarm of crows flew from a group of trees. As the two Sharingan users got ready to fight on, the first rays of sunlight peeked over the horizon. Itachi questioned, "So now you know the truth?" The Uchiha clan was planning a coup d'état, using the fox demon as a distraction. "I was under orders from the council to prevent the uprising, but I spared you." With a growl, Sasuke said, "Let's end this, once and for all," concluded Itachi. The eyes of both brothers were red. The pattern of both brothers' eyes changed. "Tsukiyomi." They agreed. As the genjutsu took effect, the colors of the world were reversed. Sasuke imitated Itachi after witnessing his growth. Both copy armies moved forward and launched an assault. Sasuke swerved through the throng until he came across the actual Itachi, who held a sword. Itachi melted away as he slammed the blade through his chest. Kunai buried themselves in the backs of Sasuke's legs as he whirled around and screamed. Itachi turned and was slashed in the throat by Sasuke's blade. Itachi swung a katana at Sasuke after it materialized in his hand. Sasuke retaliated with a high kick to Itachi's face after the blade sliced into his cheek. Sasuke lunged, his katana raised, and Itachi staggered back. The illusion was shattered when the swords simultaneously pierced the chests of both brothers. As Tsukiyomi faded, the world went back to its original colors, leaving Sasuke and Itachi gasping for air. Itachi's eye dripped blood as he gave Sasuke another scowl. Black flames surged in Itachi's eye as the Mangekyo Sharingan flashed. Sasuke responded with an equal outburst of fire. Naruto launched himself high into the air using the blade as a springboard after Kisame swung Samahata at him. As Naruto hovered in midair for a moment, he saw Itachi and Sasuke. He watched the battle as he landed far from Kisame. Kisame looked too, and his eyes were captivated by what he saw. Black flames surged in waves, each one getting larger and larger as it attempted to engulf the previous one. Patches of black remained burning after the flames eventually subsided. As Sasuke prepared himself, lightning ignited in his hand. With unhuman speed, he flew across the roof and charged Itachi. Sasuke grinned despite Itachi's last second wrist grab. The second Chidori in Sasuke's other hand came before Itachi could react. Chidori ripped into Itachi, causing blood to splash across the tiles. Sasuke pulled his fist away from Itachi's shoulder after an eternity of silence. Blood seeped into Itachi's cloak, causing him to drop to his knees. Sasuke's kunai pressed against his neck, causing him to freeze. With the kunai drawn and his gaze turned away from Itachi, Sasuke exclaimed, "Get out of here! I see no purpose in seeking revenge for those who deserve their fate." Itachi beckoned to Kisame as he struggled to stand. As they disappeared into the dawn, over the roofs, his Akatsuki partner kept him upright. Naruto appeared beside Sasuke, scattering sand. He questioned, "Why didn't you kill him?" Eyes observing the spot where the Akatsuki members had been. Sasuke responded, "Itachi was under orders from the Hokage to prevent uprising. They deserve to rot unavenged. The Uchiha clan was planning to take over the village using the fox as a distraction," he said. Naruto's mouth was hanging open and his eyes had widened in shock, but he composed himself. "But next time," Sasuke went on, "the Akatsuki will fall." Naruto remarked, "I'm behind you with that," as the forest birds began the dawn chorus. Meeting in broad daylight is asking for trouble. It's the last thing they'd expect, and they're too focused on Orochimaru to bother with us right now. The urgent, hushed voices came from the burned-out building. Looked in every direction at once, narrowed eyes kept a watch for trouble. "Himeka has overruled our objections to the fox, so what can be done?" Weapons were drawn as a new voice said, "Pardon the intrusion," to the assembly. Danzo emerged from the shadows to survey the Hyuga's secret council. One snarled, "State you business." "I believe our goals are the same," Danzo stated to the other participants. "I suggest working together to achieve a common objective. That fox is becoming a bigger thorn in our collective sides than any of us could have thought possible. It shouldn't be in the village, it shouldn't even be alive." "What is your proposal?" a Hyuga woman insisted once. "A simple solution, eliminate the demon. But he is far stronger than any of us." Danzo interrupted, displaying a glass vial of nearly invisible senbon, saying, "There are multiple ways to skin a fox, which is why we use this. Each of these will be coated with a deadly poison, and if we use them during an enemy attack, then no one will know." Someone inquired, "And what poison will be used?" As he passed the vial to the head Hyuga, Danzo said, "I'll leave that to you. And what do you want in return for helping to keep that fox out of our bloodline?" As you all know, the Konoha Council is made up of the Hokage, the elders and representatives from each of the 5 noble families of Konoha. Having 2 of the families under my influence was enough to exile the fox in the first place. But I need the support of 3 of the 5 noble families to hold a majority with the Konoha Council and to expel that fool of a Hokage. With her removed from power, I can take over and change Konoha into the military force it was always supposed to be. Someone uttered, "But Himeka still holds power over the Hyuga clan." "The old woman is not long for this world. She said it herself, she's almost twice your age. And there is always the possibility of an enemy shinobi eliminating her, or so it would appear to the other shinobi of the village. But after her passing a new leader must be selected, perhaps someone easily bent to our will." After giving his brief speech some thought, Danzo went on. "Should you assist me in my endeavor to remove the 2 obstacles in the path, then I shall reward you most generously when I rule the land of fire." Stepping forward, the oldest Hyuga gazed up into Danzo's single exposed eye. He tentatively extended his hand. A menacing smile appeared on Danzo's face as he accepted the offered hand. "Our alliance will blossom into something beautiful," Danzo said with a wicked grin. "My root Anbu are ready to enact our plan whenever you wish." The old man said, "Have your minions remove the fox during the next attack from Orochimaru." Another woman from the Hyuga community questioned, "Are you sure this is wise?" The old Hyuga said, "I'd make a deal with the devil to keep that fox from the Hyuga clan." "You just did." Looking again at Danzo's ominous face, the woman pondered. Dot 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 quote. With two leaf shinobi pursuing them, a number of sound ninja bounded through the trees. Sasuke grabbed the pursuing ninja by the ankle and threw a kunai at the escaping squad. He lost his footing and fell to the forest floor. The squad appeared to agree that fighting was their only option. As they landed, they all produced weapons as they fell through the branches to the forest floor. With a Rasengan in his right hand, Naruto charged into the sound ninja squad. Sasuke emerged and threw fireballs at the ninja, scattering them. Naruto grabbed the closest ninja and used the Rasengan sphere to slam him to the ground. The shadowy figure concealed in the canopy above them was not visible to either shinobi. As Naruto kicked an adversary, the shadow aimed precisely at him. With a flick of his hand, the unseen figure threw a thin thread at the blonde ninja. When Naruto slammed the heads of two enemy ninjas together, he didn't even feel the senbon pierce the skin on the back of his neck. Dropping the now dead ninja he was holding to the ground, Sasuke turned to face Naruto. The Uchiha grinned and said, "One enemy squad eliminated. Now let's get back before my ramen gets cold." Sasuke moaned, "You and your ramen," as he and Naruto headed back to the village. Sasuke was right behind Naruto when he launched himself over the village walls and landed in the Konoha camp. Hinata showed up and walked up to Naruto while Sasuke was debriefing the Anbu on duty. As they shared a kiss, Naruto's hand locked with Hinata's. As Naruto and Hinata headed for the mess tent, a trickle of blood trickled from Naruto's nose. Hinata turned pale as she gazed at Naruto. Hinata said, "Naruto, you're bleeding," and took a handkerchief out of her pocket. Blood was on his fingers when Naruto touched his face. In an attempt to stop the blood from flowing, Hinata wiped Naruto's nose. Hinata's expression changed to one of perplexity when she noticed Naruto stumbling to stand. "Are you alright?" inquired Hinata. "I feel kind of." Naruto's eyes glazed and he passed out before he could finish. Before Naruto hit the ground, Hinata was able to grab him. As Sasuke assisted Hinata in keeping Naruto upright, Sakura appeared beside Hinata, checking Naruto. Sakura said, "Let's take him to Tsunade," in a worried voice. Dot 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 quote. After completing Naruto's examination, Tsunade left him and Hinata in the medical tent. She gestured for the anxious onlookers to enter the Hokage tent. The concerned party squeezed into the tent all together. Tsunade declared, "It's bloody tear poisoning," with a deadly tone. Iruka and Kakashi both went nearly white. Kiba inquired, "What is bloody tear poisoning?" Whispering, "Practically a death sentence," Shizune said. "The bloody tear is a rare plant that's roots contain a lethal toxin," Tsunade told the shinobi who were present. Once distilled, an almost invisible senbon is coated in the poison then used on the enemy. The senbon is usually small enough to be unfelt when it's used on the target. "I found this in the back of his neck." Tsunade held up a glass tube containing a narrow senbon. Sasuke said, "So how do we cure it?" "The flower of the same plant contains a similar compound that will neutralize the poison and act as an antidote, if we can get it to in time," Ino stated. Sakura urged, "How do you know that?" The blonde answered, "My family owns a flower shop, and I know medicine. We've managed to stop his bleeding, but he'll soon be moving into stage 2, Tsunade said, adopting a doctor's perspective. Naruto's currently in stage 1, fever followed by delirium and hemorrhaging. With hesitation, Sasuke inquired, "What is stage 2? Failure of the circulatory system and chakra pathways followed by coma." Sakura nearly cried out, "What are we going to do? We can't let Naruto die." Before Tsunade spoke, there was an interminable minute of ringing silence in the tent. "Shizune, Kiba, Akamaru, Shino and Neji. You six are to head out and find at least one bloody tear flower." Neji said, "Where are we supposed to look? The bloody tear only grows in sandy soil that has seen bloodshed, where there is enough water to keep the roots permanently submerged and where there is plenty of sunlight and warmth," Shizune informed him. According to Kiba, needle in a haystack anyone. With the exception of Shikamaru, the entire tent gave Kiba ominous looks. He pulled a marker pen into view and unfolded a map across Tsunade's desk. Shikamaru added, 7 locations in the surrounding forest that match the criteria, while circling 7 points on the map. Of the 7, 2 of them are in enemy territory. 2 of the circles were scrawled over by him, and the other 2 are bone dry. Once more, Shikamaru scrawled on the map. Tsunade cried out, "Time is very much of the essence right now, so get going." Before he and the others took off at full speed, Neji snatched up the map and rolled it back up. Quote. Sitting on the edge of the bed where Naruto lay unconscious was Hinata. She tried not to cry and held his hand. Across the room, sitting on an empty bed, was Sasuke, who had a sneer on his face. Sakura kept looking at Naruto's bed even though she was busying herself with other patients. But deep inside, Sasuke got up and walked out of the medical tent. Whoever poisoned him had to be from Konoha because the bloody tear is only found in the forest surrounding Konoha. The Hyuga are the most knowledgeable about this uncommon plant. Former Konoha Orochimaru is obsessed with jutsu instead of plants. Despite his knowledge of medicine, Kabuto avoids using poisons. Only one person from the village remains. Assassins typically choose to use poison, and Anbu members are typically accused of murder. However, who would wish to? Sasuke suddenly realized the answer. Root Anbu, and the Hyuga Council. After turning around, the Uchiha ran toward the Hokage's tent. When Sasuke rushed into the tent, Tsunade looked up. Root Anbu poisoned Naruto, as Sasuke put it. What makes you think they did it? The bloody tear is only found in the Konoha forest, so only someone from Konoha, specifically the Hyuga, would know about it. Anbu Black Ops are usually charged with assassinations and who wants Naruto out of the way. The Hyuga Council and Root Anbu. In rage, Tsunade turned pale and then red. Slowly, as if in control, she got to her feet. Tsunade calmly declared, "I will kill them as soon as Naruto is cured." Quote. As Kiba and Akamaru rummaged through the brush, Shizune studied the map. Neji looked around with his Byakugan, and Shino thought of his insects. Emerging from the bushes, Kiba's head turned to face Shizune. "What does the flower smell like?" For a moment, Shizune was taken aback by the phrase, "honey mixed with vinegar." Kiba smelled the air as she emerged from the bushes. "Nothing," he stated quietly. On the map, Shizune scrawled, frowning, on to the last location. After gathering, the group departed into the trees. They all hurried as quickly as they could through the forest. They quickly arrived at the clearing and touched down. Kiba muttered, "There's a lot of sand around here," as his foot dug into the soft ground until it reached his ankle. Using his Byakugan, Neji scanned the entire area, taking note of the landmarks. "This is where Gaara fought Kimimaro," he stated. "That explains the sandy soil and the bloodshed," Kiba said. Looks like something good finally came out of the Sound 5 incident, Neji responded. As Kiba resumed his search for the bushes, Shino sent his bugs out into the forest. Following a stream that Neji's Byakugan had discovered, he cursed as it disappeared beneath the ground. Kiba disappeared with a splash after a cry. The team noticed a skid mark in the soft ground, which led down a slope towards the forest's edge, as soon as they turned to see where Kiba had been standing. Neji discovered Kiba in a pool of water on his back after following the slope. Sitting up, Kiba asked, "What happened?" Neji said, "You hit the jackpot," gesturing over his shoulder. Kiba glanced around. 5 long stems protruded from the center of a cluster of leaves on the pool's bank. A long crimson flower hung from each stem, drooping over the water's edge. "Lucky I missed them," Kiba grinned. Tsunade checked Naruto 10 times before leaving the medical tent. As Shino, Kiba, Shizune, Akamaru, and Neji ran into the village, she glanced around. Kiba held a pouch with a red flower protruding from the top and said, "Someone order a cure?" Shizune followed Tsunade as she snatched up the pouch and dove back into the medical tent. Tsunade removed the flower's petals and tossed them into a bowl that was waiting. She then watered it down after grinding them into a paste. She gave Sakura the bowl. Tsunade beckoned to Sasuke and said, "Make sure he drinks all of this. I believe there is a matter we must attend to." Sasuke was right behind Tsunade as she strode out of the tent. They arrived at the Anbu tent after marching through the camp. Tsunade swiftly reappeared after vanishing inside the tent, pulling Danzo along with her. As Tsunade pulled him in the direction of the Hyuga compound, the elderly man appeared too stunned to protest. As Tsunade entered the main doors of the Hyuga compounds, Himeka looked up from her tea. She inquired, "Is Naruto alright?" "He'll be alright, but it's the cause of his illness, is what we've come to talk about." Himeka's eyebrow went up. It was bloody tear poisoning. Himeka joined the first eyebrow with the second. "Sasuke and I believe that the Root Anbu has collaborated with certain members of the Hyuga Council behind your back." "Lies," Danzo protested, but Sasuke silenced him with a kick to the ribs. Himeka's anger boiled up and her face flushed. "Haishi," she yelled, causing Tsunade and Sasuke to leap. "Yes, mother," said Haishi as he emerged. "Instruct him to assemble the council," Himeka said. The council was gathered in less than 5 minutes. Himeka arranged the council in a line in the courtyard and glared at each of them. "Hold out you hands," Himeka commanded. Reluctantly, the council members extended their hands. Tsunade dropped Danzo and proceeded up and down the line until she came across a member whose hands had red patches on them. She took hold of him and dragged him away from the line. His company conspirators were found and removed from the line. Up after less than 5 minutes of threats. "I want each of these traitors' bloodlines bound then thrown out of the village," instructed Himeka. When Hyuga Shinobi showed up, he pulled the council members from the courtyard. They all screamed in protest, but their voices were quickly cut off. "Now if you will excuse me, I need to take care of those idiots." Tsunade glanced at Danzo and grinned while nodding. "Now to take care of you," she said with a malevolent grin. Danzo collided with Sasuke's legs while attempting to retreat. He whimpered as he gazed up into red eyes. "For the next 72 your ass is mine." The first sounds to break through the darkness around the blonde fox vessel were muffled ones. Naruto thought that while everyone else was on the shore, his head was underwater. Then he experienced the unwanted sensation of pain all over his body, with ice covering his skin and fire coursing through his veins. After what seemed like an eternity, the pain subsided and was replaced by a pleasant numbness. Through the dark wall surrounding him, Naruto's senses were able to detect that someone was gripping his hand. It took an eternity for the sounds surrounding him to become distinct enough to pick out individual voices. Only Naruto, dense enough. Sasuke, number 1 knucklehead. Kakashi, troublesome, without question. Shikamaru. Naruto struggled to return the squeeze but was unsuccessful as he felt the hand tighten its hold on him. He had some sense of day and night from the sounds of the outside world, but the hand never left his. The world eventually became a recurring sequence of light and shadow as the cycle of day and night succeeded in penetrating the emptiness. He forced his eyes open just enough to see through the cage of his lashes, even though they appeared to be glued shut. Naruto caught glimpses of the outside world and assumed the identities of the blurs based on their voices, but the world appeared to be out of focus. The images became sharper and the blob like silhouettes changed to people, shaped ones, just like the sounds. Naruto was able to turn his head and gaze at the person seated at his bedside through his eyelashes. Without seeing her face, he was certain it was Hinata. Naruto groaned as he made his first contact with the outside world. The silhouettes of everyone within earshot immediately blocked his narrow field of vision. Naruto groaned again as he felt his eyelid pulled back and a bright light was shone into his eye. Tsunade assisted him in sitting up and greeted him, "Welcome back to the land of the living." "How do you feel?" inquired Hinata. "Like Akamaru's chew toy," Naruto said in response. While the others were still conversing, Tsunade began to check Naruto's vitals. "Any idea what happened to me?" Sakura's expression hardened as she said, "Danzo poisoned you with a rare plant." Naruto snarled, "I'm going to flatten him, you're a little late for that," Sakura advised him. Tsunade and Sasuke got there first. As Sasuke and Tsunade's faces changed into menacing smiles, Naruto asked, "What did you do to Danzo?" and then wished he hadn't. Sasuke remarked, "Tsunade beat the hell out of him." Followed by 3 days of torture by Sasuke, Tsunade continued, which left him somewhat mentally handicapped. "In the end we made him stand and told him to start walking until his feet bled, then keep walking." Naruto couldn't help but shiver. Tsunade said, "I dare say he'll turn up somewhere, eventually," with a malicious tone. The air in the tent lightened, and Tsunade and Sasuke's expressions returned to normal. "But here's something that you'll find interesting," Sasuke continued, "your banishment in null and void." Naruto's eyebrow went up. "Turns out that Danzo either blackmailed or threatened most of the council members to get them to vote for your banishment." "Why am I not surprised?" said Naruto. "If he ever reappears again, I'll set the fox on him." Quote. After giving Naruto a final examination, Tsunade forced him to lie down in bed once more. He attempted to object, but Tsunade refused to listen. "Naruto, your body is still recovering. That poison is a death sentence under normal situations, so just relax and let yourself recover." Naruto insisted, "I feel fine," as he attempted to get out of bed once more. "You may feel fine, but your circulatory system is still weak, and if you push yourself you will start to bleed again." "But you know I heal." "I don't want to hear it, you'll be up and around in 2 days at the most. Now lie down before I tie you to the bed." Reluctantly, Naruto reclined in bed and gazed at the canvas ceiling. He whispered, "Don't blame me if I go mad from boredom," while Tsunade began caring for the other patients. Before Naruto had a much needed diversion, he was able to lie motionless for nearly an hour, either sleeping or staring at the ceiling. Himeka emerged as the tent flap was pushed aside, Hinata trailing closely behind with a small teapot and a tray containing 3 cups. Naruto arched an inquisitive eyebrow. Himeka grinned as she took a seat beside Naruto's bed and said, "Since you couldn't come to me, I decided to bring the tea here." Before serving the tea to Naruto, Hinata served it to her grandmother. Naruto glanced at the tea in his cup and arched an eyebrow once more. Strange objects floated close to the surface of the pale green water. Himeka watched his face and said, "That is a medicinal tea that will do you the world of good. The recipe has been handed down through the Hyuga clan from the time of my grandmother." Naruto choked after taking a sip. Himeka concurred, "It is a bit on the bitter side." Hinata burst out laughing into her own cup as Naruto grudgingly took another sip and pulled a face. Dot 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 quote. Naruto was back on his feet less than a day later. He walked to the Hokage's tent, leaning on Hinata's shoulder. Although Shikamaru had called an urgent meeting to discuss strategies for the impending battle with Orochimaru, the blonde was unsure of what had transpired during his unconsciousness. The crowd waited in death silence for Shikamaru to explain why he had gathered them as the final ninja crammed themselves into the Hokage's tent. "I think I've figured out why Orochimaru's attacks are becoming more frantic," Shikamaru said in the quiet tent. "If you check the time frame, he should be ready to switch bodies about now." "How can you be sure he hasn't already switched bodies?" asked Sakura. "The way I see it, Orochimaru is still fixated on Sasuke's body as a replacement," replied Shikamaru. Sasuke mumbled, "That's an unpleasant though. But I've been thinking, Orochimaru is too powerful for anyone to defeat, even Tsunade and Jiraiya together couldn't beat him," said Shikamaru. Sasuke spit out, "So we should just give up and run." "He's too strong for anyone to beat," Shikamaru shot back. "Hear what I'm saying." None of his audience members missed Shikamaru's emphasis on the word one. The first person to realize what he was saying was Tsunade. She questioned, "A tag? Team assault?" "Right," said Shikamaru. "Two paired ninja attack then retreat to recover as another two take their place. Let one team recover while Orochimaru is busy with another, maintaining an almost constant full strength attack." Naruto retorted, "But what if he switches bodies?" Shikamaru grinned and said, "I have a plan for that outcome as well. Dot 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 quote. The first indication that something was approaching the hidden leaf was the caching of trees. A huge tail crashed into the village wall, causing it to tremble and tremble. Orochimaru and Kabuto sat on Manda's head as he rose over the wall, causing sections of stone to fall and crack. Another section of the wall was broken when the enormous snake's tail swung out once more. A flurry of fireballs greeted Manda as she slithered through the wall hole. The summoned creature was surprised but not harmed by the flame attack. Manda threw his head back and forth as he reared up. Kabuto was launched into space, but Orochimaru was able to maintain his balance. He flew away from the called snake after landing on the wreckage of a building. Naruto saw that Kabuto was retreating and pursued him. Sasuke approached the snake slowly as Naruto drew away, his eyes turning black and red. Orochimaru muttered, "Foolish boy," and hurled a swarm of snakes at him. Sasuke remained motionless while glaring at the advancing reptiles. Between them and Sasuke, there was a sickening crunch as the snake wave struck an unseen object. Sasuke made a series of familiar signs, his hands blurring. Fire style. Fireball jutsu. Sasuke unleashed a massive ball of fire that engulfed the stunned snake wave. Orochimaru growled when Sasuke's fireball burned the snakes to ashes in a matter of seconds. The air in front of Sasuke rippled as the smoke cleared, and a big round shield materialized. Behind the shield, a skeletal arm emerged, growing upward to reveal a shoulder. Above Sasuke's head, a ribcage emerged, with additional astral bones protruding from it. The Susanoo Titan was completed by the appearance of muscles and skin over the skeleton, followed by clothing and armor. Manda lunged once more, but Susanoo caught her. Manda's tail encircled Susanoo as she was ready to discard the snake, trying to crush the giant's life. Dot 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 quote. With both feet in Kabuto's back, Naruto threw himself at him. Kabuto staggered forward, but Naruto's foot struck his face, knocking him back again. In an attempt to stop the blood from his nose, Naruto retreated from Kabuto. Kabuto formed his typical chakra scalpel as his chakra flowed out and covered his hand. Naruto grunted, "I can do that too," as chakra blades materialized at his fingertips. For what seemed like an eternity, neither shinobi moved as they stood facing one another. First to move, Naruto sent Kabuto a shockwave of chakra. He charged at Naruto, avoiding the blast. Before Kabuto flickered, Naruto ducked low and kicked him in the chin. Naruto appeared next to Kabuto, who slashed his arm but only his sand in an attempt to strike him. Once more appearing, Naruto kicked a cloud of sand into Kabuto's face after catching it with his foot. Even with his glasses protecting his eyes from the sand, Kabuto was unable to see Naruto leaping at him with his blades first. The first blade sliced deeply into Kabuto's forearm, but he was able to block it with his scalpel. He was able to push Naruto away and hide in a dense forest. Naruto called out, "I haven't forgotten about your regeneration ability," as he bounced off a tree and produced a Rasengan in his hand. Until he discovered Kabuto, Naruto ripped the bushes to pieces. After kicking Kabuto in the chest, Naruto retreated and used his other hand to form another Rasengan. A moment before Naruto charged and remade his chakra scalpels, Kabuto's arm recovered. The first chakra scalpel was barely avoided by Naruto, and the second one sliced his arm, but it was too late to prevent Naruto from slamming the Rasengan into Kabuto. Dot 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 quote. Manda flashed his fangs while Susanoo fought against the snake's hold. Susanoo freed its arm and clamped down on Manda's head like a vice. Both titans separated during the brief grapple. Susanoo dodged Manda's next lunge, catching the snake's lower jaw with one hand as the summoned creature went by, but she was powerless to stop it. Both giants stood with their backs to one another for a brief moment before Manda let out a painful cry. Susanoo turned to see Manda writhing, then dropped Manda's severed jaw to the ground with a crash. Smiling, Sasuke said, "Time to finish this," his eyes burning red. With its two fists, Susanoo slammed Manda's head into the ground as it lunged at the still, writhing snake. As he forced Susanoo to pull its leg back and kick Manda into the cliff face behind Konoha, Sasuke's eyes glistened. Susanoo uncorked the sake bottle at the snake's elbow as it arose once more, blood streaming from its ruined mouth. The Sakenagi longsword was formed when the astral titan swept his arm in a broad arc. Manda's tail was pinned to the ground after he swung it out. Susanoo jerked the blade up from the floor and drove it through the snake's head without missing a beat. Even after the summoned creature fell to the ground and Manda's eyes dulled, he continued to look at his enemy with utter contempt. The titan began to wane, and Susanoo's sword retreated back into its gourd. Susanoo's skin and armor disappeared first, followed by his muscles and bones. As the giant faded, Sasuke's eyes changed. Mangekyo Sharingan reverted to Onyx after changing back to a typical Sharingan. Before he could think, Sasuke's ears perked up and he reacted, narrowly avoiding Orochimaru's sword swing. With a short high whistle and a longer one, Sasuke put two fingers in his mouth and threw himself backwards, away from the snake. Over the battle, the whistle reverberated throughout the village. With a menacing smile, Orochimaru landed away from the snake, ready to fight. "Now Sasuke, I'll take what should have been mine a long time ago," he said. Snarling, "Over my dead body," Sasuke said. "I do hope we can avoid that." As Neji and Hinata emerged, Sasuke's ears perked up once more and he grinned. Sasuke charged at Orochimaru while holding a Chidori. A huge snake emerged from the Sannin's sleeve, surprising Sasuke, who had dodged the first blow of Orochimaru's sword. Orochimaru leaned in close to Sasuke as his Chidori faded and the snake wrapped itself around his neck. The snake hissed, "I'm disappointed, Sasuke," as Sasuke choked. "I thought you were better than this." Gasping for breath, Sasuke scratched at his thought. "Now to take your body." Orochimaru felt something wasn't quite right, and his smile turned into a frown. Before exploding in a cloud of dense white smoke, Sasuke smirked as his eyes locked with Orochimaru's. Orochimaru bellowed, "Damn shadow clones," instead. Neji walked around behind Orochimaru as Hinata emerged through the smoke in front of him. The two Hyugas adopted their clan's position. They recited, 8 trigrams, 120. 8 palms, with perfectly synchronized voices. Neji and Hinata pounded the tips of their fingers into Orochimaru, being cautious to strike the same chakra point simultaneously. The Hyuga taijutsu sealed Orochimaru's chakra pathways, leaving him with no choice but to endure. Neji leapt to stand beside Hinata and strike their last blow. With their chakra effortlessly tearing through muscle and bone, they both placed their open palms in the center of Orochimaru's chest. Hinata and Neji separated to allow Choji, the next wave, to pass as Orochimaru staggered backwards. "Partial expansion jutsu," Choji exclaimed, clenching his now enormous fist and slamming it into Orochimaru's face. Orochimaru attempted to block, but the weight of Choji's hands alone was too much, and Choji drove him into the ground with his fists. Orochimaru was thrown into the air after Choji grabbed his leg and pulled him off his feet, swinging him around his head. Taking off from the ground, 2 green blurs shot straight for Orochimaru. Orochimaru was quickly kicked and punched by Lee and Guy in the recognizable reverse lotus pattern, but they doubled. Lee seemed to knock Guy back upwards as he slammed his foot into Orochimaru, sending him flying to the ground. Their contribution was completed by a spinning Guy striking Orochimaru feet first and driving him into the ground. As he forced himself to stand, the snake saw Tsunade and Sakura's fists moving toward his face, and the dust cleared. After the initial blow from Tsunade and Sakura struck Orochimaru in the middle of his face, he was struck repeatedly in the chest and stomach. Each kunoichi struck the same spot on either side of Orochimaru's body, acting as a mirror image of the other. They made sure that every blow they delivered broke something by carefully placing their punches on the snake's vital points. He was knocked backwards by their final blow, which was a double punch to the jaw. Orochimaru swayed but remained upright. His eyes snapped back into focus just in time to see Kakashi and Sasuke sprinting toward him, each holding a lightning shrouded hand. They punched through his shoulders, causing the snake to scream. Kakashi and Sasuke retreated as blood spurted from the holes in Orochimaru's shoulders. Jiraiya and Naruto charged at the snake, imitating Kakashi and Sasuke's attack run, but this time, each of their hands held a spinning Rasengan. Orochimaru was briefly struck by the pure chakra before being hurled crashing through a number of hardly standing walls after they rammed the spheres into his chest. As Gaara prepared his sand to finish Orochimaru, Naruto shifted to a better position, chakra blades ready. However, the snake Sannin vanished as the dust settled. Tsunade commanded, "Find him," and the ninja dispersed. After spotting a trail of blood on the ground, Naruto began a furious chase, but he frowned when the blood drops disappeared. Naruto searched the area but was unable to locate the snake. Naruto flickered in a whirlpool of sand and swore. Quote. Orochimaru staggered away from the ninja who were reading. A shinobi appeared at the end of the street and saw the snake, which froze. Even though Orochimaru couldn't see the shinobi's face, he seemed hurt, and then the snake noticed the big round glasses. Kabuto ran to his master and exclaimed, "Lord Orochimaru," after him. "Kabuto, your body," The snake spit blood on the ground as it choked. "Take my body, Lord Orochimaru." Orochimaru appeared to shed his skin, revealing his true self as his body disintegrated. When the enormous white snake lunged at Kabuto, his face was the last to fall to the ground. The snake encircled Kabuto and sank its teeth into his throat. As the snake sank into Kabuto's body, he let out a silent scream through his open mouth. After discarding his glasses, Kabuto put both hands over his eyes. He knelt down, picked up Orochimaru's face, and then pulled it across his own, looking up with green slit pupil eyes after a brief convulsion. Orochimaru rolled his shoulders and flexed his fingers before returning to the battlefield. When Tsunade noticed the snake Sannin emerge from the darkness, she was still organizing the search. Tsunade was surrounded by a fully armed Anbu squad that appeared. Orochimaru picked up his sword once more and stood over his former arms. One sword swipe defeated the Anbu as they charged at Orochimaru. The snake asked himself, "Now where did we leave off? Oh, I remember." With his sword raised, Orochimaru lunged at Tsunade without faltering. Tsunade simply stared defiantly at Orochimaru without attempting to dodge. As he moved closer to the Hokage, the snake's charge appeared to slow and his pace became erratic. Orochimaru tried to stand but fell back to the ground after his legs gave way and he crashed to the ground. Dead tissue was spreading up his legs, and when he looked down at them, his eyes widened in surprise. A burning pain spread with the black shadow, and the snake snarled. Orochimaru turned his focus to his hands as the pain suddenly surfaced there. His hands turned black and necrotic, and he stared in horror. He felt a burning pain as the death moved up his arms. Orochimaru fell to his knees, the snake's legs rotting as the horde of Konoha ninjas surrounded him. It demanded, "What trickery is this? Orochimaru, Kabuto has been dead for over an hour," Tsunade stated. "We used the dead soul jutsu to move his body." Orochimaru hissed, his eyes narrowed, and he attempted to throw his sword at Tsunade but was unsuccessful. The snake screamed as it reached his torso, and the deadly shadow continued to spread up his arms and legs. Jiraiya said to his former friend, "Rot in hell," while the snake spit blood on the ground and choked. At the point where death reached his neck, Orochimaru gave one last, spine-tingling scream. Orochimaru's eyes became lifeless and drab, and his voice seemed to die with him. Before it fell forward and struck the ground with a firm thump, Orochimaru's body knelt frozen for a considerable amount of time, silently screaming at the sky. When Tsunade saw Orochimaru's contorted face, she turned the body over. She turned away from the body and made her way back to the Hokage tent, letting out a sigh. "It's over," she exhaled. Tsunade turned and froze when she heard a choking sound. Orochimaru, the still, rotting corpse, twitched and stood up, its eyes blazing. His yell was, "I'll drag this whole village to hell with me." Orochimaru's body appeared to disintegrate, revealing his snake persona once more. Rising swiftly, Orochimaru soon loomed over the village. Before its skin split and its single head became two, the snake froze. 8 snake heads loomed over the leaf and sand shinobi as the heads kept spilting. Oshi, Naruto began, but was cut off when a snake's head struck the ground where he had been standing just a moment before. Tsunade yelled, "Get away from it! Retreat!" With the exception of Naruto and Sasuke, the Konoha and Suna shinobi didn't need to be reminded twice and wasted no time in fleeing from the Hydra monster. As he flickered, Naruto yelled, "Sasuke, we need a Sharingan trump card." Sasuke roared back, "I don't have the chakra. How about you call forth the boss Toad?" "That thing won't let me stand still long enough to summon him," Naruto shot back, avoiding another Hydra head lunge. Smirking as it was severed, Naruto hurled a chakra shockwave at the closest snakehead. As the stump writhed in agony, the head was already disintegrating before it struck the ground. As the wound healed, Naruto's smirk disappeared, and a new head emerged to replace the one that had been severed. The blonde landed beside Sasuke after flitting out of the snakehead's line of sight. "Any bright ideas?" Sasuke answered, "Who do I look like? Shikamaru?" "I thought you were supposed to be a genius," exclaimed Naruto as he dodged a Hydra thrown wave of debris. One of the Hydra's tails destroyed the building the two shinobi were standing on, and they fled in search of a different viewpoint. "Naruto, sever the heads, I'll seal the wounds with Amaterasu. That should at least buy us some time." After giving a nod, Naruto and Sasuke took off together. Sasuke and Naruto separated to avoid a lunging head, and Naruto targeted the closest head as they approached. Naruto sliced off the head with a shockwave. Black flames surged, sealing the wound as Sasuke's eyes met the neck. Sasuke followed closely behind Naruto as he proceeded to the next head. Naruto cleaved another head after avoiding a tail swipe. Sasuke added another black fire patch to complete his task. The two kept going around the Hydra, cutting and sealing the heads until there was just one left. Naruto screamed, "Last one," as he struck the snake with both chakra blades after landing on the final head. He decapitated the snake by swinging his arms after forcing his chakra through it. Naruto jumped away and landed beside Sasuke as he covered the final stump in flames. Their faces were grim as they gazed at the writhing mass of necks and tails. Naruto swore, "It's still not dead, summon the toad." Sasuke said to him, "We need more firepower." Naruto sank his teeth into his thumb and nodded. Naruto exclaimed, "Summoning," and he and Sasuke disappeared in a puff of white smoke. Sasuke realized they were standing on Gamabunta's head as the smoke cleared. Gamabunta began, "Been a while, brat," but as soon as he saw the Hydra flailing, his voice trailed off. "What the hell is that?" Naruto told the toad, "We have to kill it now. The long story can wait." Gamabunta said, "Ready when you are," and pulled out his sword. Naruto said, "Hang on," to Sasuke. A fresh head emerged from one of the charred stumps, but Gamabunta's blade cut it off once more. "This is pointless," shouted Naruto. Sasuke retorted, "We need to destroy this thing on one go," while igniting another neck stump. Naruto suddenly had an idea. "Stop this thing from moving, Boss Toad." After launching himself into the air and avoiding the writhing mass of necks and tails, Gamabunta landed back on the center of the Hydra and drove his sword through its core, pinning it to the ground. Gamabunta then jumped away once more, this time landing out of the Hydra monster's reach. "Let's spray the Boss Toad with oil. If you can, try to create a mist." Gamabunta responded, "I hope you've learned some fire techniques," while he rubbed the requested oil into his throat pouch. "Ignite the oil and I'll fan the flames with this," Naruto said, turning to face Sasuke. Sasuke used the last of his chakra as he prepared himself, and the blonde called forth a Rasengan loaded with his wind chakra before sliding down to Gamabunta's nose. Toad Flame Hurricane, fire style. The Hydra was caught in the center of the firestorm, and its screams could be heard over the roar of the flames. The Hydra was incinerated in seconds, and the raging winds of the firestorm scattered the ashes over the forest before dying away to nothing, leaving only scorched ground. Gamabunta released a heavy spray of oil, and Sasuke followed with a jet of fire, and Naruto threw his Rasengan into the flames. The outcome was spectacular. The oil spray turned into a massive fireball that was whipped up into a tornado of white-hot flame. Naruto mumbled, "I think we went a bit overboard." "Just a bit," added Sasuke. Both Naruto and Sasuke were struck with a sudden realization. Naruto muttered, "It's over. We've won." While the Leaf and Suna shinobi stood atop the Konoha wall, cheering, applauding, and jumping around, the two ninja turned. Naruto extended his fist to Sasuke, who tapped his own against Naruto's. Naruto then turned back to the other shinobi and gave up all dignity as he began dancing around as well. Sasuke and Gamabunta both moaned, "Idiot," together. Quote. Shizune appeared as Naruto and the other Suna ninja were about to leave the village, and the morning sun, which was only a temporary solution until more time for rebuilding, poured golden light over the top and through the crevices of Konoha's hastily constructed wall. She informed him, "Tsunade wants to see you." Naruto nodded and made his way to the Hokage's tent, pushing the flap aside as he stepped inside and met Tsunade and Jiraiya's stern stare. "You're going back to Suna," Tsunade responded, "even after the banishment order is gone." "It's not as simple as you think," Naruto replied. "Gaara, Temari and Kankuro are my family. They took me in when I had nowhere to go." "We were your family before Suna," Jiraiya reminded Naruto. "It's not like I'll be gone forever," Naruto said. "I'll spend a few months in Suna, then a few in Konoha, and so on." "There's nothing we can say that'll change your mind," Tsunade sighed. Naruto gave a headshake. He tapped the Konoha headband around his arm and the Suna one around his forehead, saying, "I belong to both villages." Once more, Tsunade sighed. "Well, when you get back, you'll have a load of paperwork waiting for you, Rokudame." Naruto's jaw thudded loudly to the ground. "What?" Quietly, he inquired. "You heard me right, brat, you are going to be the Rokudame Hokage." For nearly a minute, Naruto was too stunned to respond, and when his limbs began to function normally again, he embraced Tsunade. "For what purpose is that? You've shown yourself to be more than capable of the role over the past few months," she said. "If I'm Hokage, then I can't bounce between Suna and Konoha as I want to," Naruto said. Letting go of Tsunade as a sudden thought hit him and his face fell. Tsunade casually remarked, "I dare say I could be persuaded to look after things while you're away." Naruto's expression brightened once more, and he seized Tsunade once more. Tsunade muttered, all right," in an attempt to dismiss Naruto. When Naruto eventually let go of Tsunade once more, she moved out of arm's length. "I need to make a few arrangements before I leave if we're done here. Later, Pervy Sage and Granny Tsunade." Naruto slipped out of the tent without waiting for a response. What does "arrange a few things" mean to him? Tsunade glanced at Jiraiya and inquired. "Don't look at me," Jiraiya said in response. "Why am I getting a headache all of a sudden?" Tsunade asked, rubbing the bridge of her nose. Quote. As he turned to face Konoha, Naruto heard the sounds of reconstruction going on all around him. Temari and Kankuro were seated against a heap of debris, and Gaara was standing next to him. Naruto turned to hear footsteps, and then Sasuke and Sakura, each carrying a full rucksack, came toward him. With an eyebrow raised, Naruto said, "What are you planning?" "This village is nothing more than a collection of unpleasant memories." Sasuke told him, "I think I'll start over somewhere new, and Suna seems as good a place as any." Sakura caught Naruto's attention. "Knowing you, you'll end up half dead and needing someone to patch you up," Sakura stated to him, "and who better than me?" "Do you mind if they accompany you?" Gaara shrugged when Naruto asked. "Their choice." Temari whispered, "We're going to need a bigger tower." "Should we start?" Sasuke walked over to the gates and asked. "We're still waiting for one more person." After completing his sentence, Naruto turned to face Hinata and Himeka, who were approaching him when Hinata grabbed Naruto's arm. "Why did it take so long?" he inquired. "We had to wait until Heishi was distracted," Himeka stated to him. "Now you look after my granddaughter Naruto." Naruto assured her, "Don't worry, I'll take good care of her." An irate shout sounded, and everyone turned. Hinata, with other Hyuga shinobi pursuing him, Heishi roared as he appeared, looking furious. "I think we'd best be making tracks," Naruto muttered as he went pale, and he and Hinata disappeared in a whirlpool of sand. "Await us," Temari called before disappearing as well, followed by Sakura, Sasuke, Gaara, and Kankuro. Hinata. She was already well out of earshot when Heishi shouted into the morning. After the war, Konoha took a while to recover and rebuild, but with the help of neighboring countries, it was nearly back to normal within 6 months. After the first few buildings were put up, the civilian population began to return, and during the rebuilding process, Himeka decided that Naruto and Hinata needed more space than his old apartment could provide. Naruto was still getting used to the size of his new home, which was built not far from the Hyuga compound. The defeat of Orochimaru sent shockwaves through the other lands, making allies cheer and enemies cower. However, the final nail in Orochimaru's coffin was the return of the Land of Sound. Konoha was preparing for a celebration now that things had returned to normal in the Land of Fire. The entire village was committed to making the occasion one that would be remembered for a very long time, as tonight would be the first anniversary of Konoha's reconstruction. Naruto looked down into the street as the first of the lanterns in the long chains were lit, each lantern on the long strings bearing the leaf symbol stamped on one side and Suna's on the other. As dusk claimed its turn in the sky, all that remained of the sun was an amber hue, and the last of the sun's heat lingered as the fireflies began glowing. A few villagers began to move around the streets as Hinata called to Naruto from inside. "Naruto, you better get changed now or we'll be late." Leaning away from the railing, Naruto entered their shared bedroom, dumped his belongings on his side of the double bed, and then changed into the black and orange kimono that Hinata had chosen for him. He finished tying the sash and then turned to his bedside table, opening the drawer and taking out a small case no bigger than his hand, which he quickly concealed in his kimono as soon as he heard Hinata enter the room. Hinata was wearing a lilac kimono with a cream flower pattern along the hem tied with a purple sash, and her long hair was secured with an elaborate clasp that Naruto assumed belonged to Himeka. Naruto whispered, "Beautiful," and planted a kiss on her cheek. Naruto grinned as Hinata flushed. He smiled and extended his arm to Hinata, saying, "I still say you're cute when you're embarrassed." After taking Naruto's arm, Hinata led him downstairs, where they heard voices as they passed the guest rooms. "Now go easy on the sake, Gaara," Kankuro said, "we don't want a drunk Kazekage." "Take your own advice, Kankuro," Temari reprimanded. "Are you five ready?" Naruto leaned around the door and asked. Naruto looked at Sasuke, observing that his midnight blue kimono featured the Uchiha crest on the shoulders, while Sakura's was a pale pink that matched her hair. Gaara, much to his distaste, was wearing his full Kazekage robes, while Temari and Kankuro were wearing cream and black kimonos, respectively. "Ready when you are," Gaara said, taking his broad hat in response. As the procession moved away, Hinata returned to her place on Naruto's arm. Naruto led the group out the door, stopping to lock it after everyone had left. He was followed by Gaara, Kankuro, and Temari, followed by Sakura and Sasuke, who walked towards the Hokage mansion. As more of the Konoha 12 showed up, the procession grew in size, with Shino, Choji, and Kiba joining first, followed by Sasuke and Sakura, Tenten, Neji, and Lee. Neji was dressed similarly to Hinata, but darker, while Lee's was in his usual green, and Tenten wore a dark cherry. Lee appeared to be about to offer Sakura his arm, but Neji stopped him by placing a hand on his shoulder and shaking his head once, knowing that her refusal, no matter how polite, would cause him to pout through the celebration. Shikamaru and Ino eventually completed the group. The procession arrived at the Hokage mansion and the celebration grounds in front of it, with people already bustling around. The longest table was a T-shaped table in the middle, and the area was lit by numerous lanterns. Gaara moved away from the group and sat at the top of the table, to the left of Tsunade at its head, while Himeka was already at Tsunade's right. As more villagers and shinobi entered the grounds, the tables began to fill up, and Naruto waved to Iruka, Kakashi, and the other senseis as they took their seats at another table. The blonde didn't miss Anko sitting next to Kakashi, getting too close for Kakashi's comfort, so he buried his nose in his ever-present copy of Icha Icha Paradise. Eventually, all the tables were filled, and the commotion subsided as Tsunade stood to speak to the village. "We battled to survive during a period of hardship," Tsunade said solemnly. "The will of fire guided us during a period of darkness. We grieved for the people we lost during a difficult time." Tsunade's voice rose. "Those who threaten us and those who band together against us will know this. The will of fire will burn forever. But after the destruction, after the devastation, we rose again from the ashes with our allies to help us." As Tsunade sat down again, the atmosphere of the evening brightened as food appeared and then vanished as swiftly as it had appeared. A great cheer rose from the village and reverberated through the surrounding forest, and it seemed to go on forever before gradually dying away and being replaced by a low murmur of voices. As the feast came to an end, the villagers began to disperse from the tables, but they did not go back to their houses. Naruto and Hinata joined hands and walked away from the crowd, while the other ninja dispersed as well. As the village's main lights were extinguished, leaving only the soft glow of the fireflies and paper lanterns, Naruto's face broke into a small smile, and he managed to hide a blush as he and Hinata left the main crowd. He led Hinata to a peaceful grassy hill and sat, gazing up at the full moon, while Hinata sat, leaning into his side as he placed his arm around her shoulders. He said, "You look really lovely in the moonlight," which caused her to flush. Naruto swallowed, extremely anxious. "Hinata," he began, "I promised myself something a long time ago. I said I would ask you a question after this was over." Hinata's lavender eyes widened when she saw the gold ring in Naruto's hand as he shifted into a kneeling position in front of her and reached around to pull something from his kimono, leaving her perplexed. "Will you wed me, Hinata?" After a minute or so of being unable to speak, Hinata snapped out of it and grinned as she put the ring on her finger, her eyes misting. "Yes," Hinata said in a whisper. When Hinata squeaked and jumped in surprise due to a sudden explosion, Naruto leaned in to kiss her and looked up to see a shower of colored stars in the night sky. Fireworks. A relieved Hinata sighed. Another explosion sent blue sparks flying in all directions, followed by a scattering of gold. As the sky was filled with unnatural stars, Hinata leaned against Naruto once more, and as more fireworks exploded overhead, Sasuke and Sakura appeared next to Naruto and Hinata, both of them gazing up into the sky. Kakashi, who had Anko on his arm, and Iruka also entered Naruto's field of vision. The blonde glanced over the village spread out below the hill and saw most of the village staring into the sky. Naruto glanced at his friends, then looked back up, and when more fireworks exploded overhead, he squeezed Hinata's hand. She returned the squeeze.
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.